Good morning. So happy to be with you this morning. And my devotion is entitled, In What Kind of Soil Are You Planted? And the scripture reading comes from Matthew chapter 13, verse 23. And it comes from the King James Version. But he that receives seed in the good ground is he that heareth the word and understandeth it, which also beareth fruit, and bringeth forth some an hundredfold, some 60, some 30. For some of us, and I am included in this group, we have just begun our journey with gardening. And for others, you could share tips on any aspect of gardening, from when the plant crops that grow above the ground or below the ground, to crop rotation, how to manage or prevent diseases, and the different kind of soil that plants need. You will also know that if the soil is rocky or full of weeds or just too hard, you may very well not have a good crop. This morning, I want to draw your attention to the parable of the sower, where my emphasis will be placed on the soil. And what I want to ask you today is, in what kind of soil are you planted? Let's pray. Father God, even now I ask that you be with us all in our understanding, and may your name be glorified even through this devotion, is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. In the parable of the sower, mention is first made of the seed sown by the way. Some of the seed that was planted fell on the path where the ground was very hard. The seeds just lay on the top of the ground, and the birds came and ate the seeds. The seed sown by the wayside represents the word of God as it falls upon the heart of an inattentive hearer. Like the hard beaten path trodden down by the feet of men and beasts, is the heart that becomes the highway for the world's traffic, its pleasures and sins. Absorbed in selfish aims and selfish indulgences, the soul is hardened to the deceitfulness of sin. The spiritual faculties are paralyzed. Men hear the word, but understand it not. They do not discern that it applies to themselves. They do not realize their need of or their danger. They do not perceive the love of Christ, and they pass by the message of his grace as something that does not concern them. Then some of the seed fell on rocky or stony ground. The seed sprang up quickly, but when the sun came, the plants dried up because they didn't have good roots, and as a result, lacked the nourishment needed to sustain their growth. In the book Christ's Object Lesson, E.G. White mentions that many who make a profession of religion are stony ground hearers. Like the rock underlying the layer of earth, the selfishness of the natural heart underlies the soil and their good desires and aspirations. The love of self is not subdued. They have not seen the exceeding sinfulness of sin, and the heart has not been humbled under a sense of its guilt. This class may be easily convinced and appear to be bright converts, but they have only a superficial religion. Here is the third category of ground where the seeds I'm sorry, someone just came up and is blocking me. Oh my, just a minute. Right, sorry. This class may be easily convinced and appear to be bright converts, but they only have a superficial religion. Here is the third category of ground where the seeds were planted. Some of the seeds fell among the weeds, and plants grew for a little while, but the weeds took over and choked them up. Listen to this description. He also that received seed among the thorns. I'm sorry, when you don't have your own computer, this is what happens. Sorry. He also that received seed among the thorns is he that heareth the word, and the care of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches choked the word, and he became unfruitful. The gospel seed often falls among thorns and noxious weeds. And if there is not a moral transformation in the human heart, if old habits and practices and the former life of sin are not left behind, if the attributes of Satan are not expelled from the soul, the crop will be choked. The thorns will come to be the crop and will kill out the wheat. If the heart is not kept under the control of God, if the Spirit does not work unceasingly to refine and ennoble the character, the old habits will reveal themselves in the life. If we do not gain the victory, then sin is gaining the victory over us. Christ specified the things that are dangerous to the soul. Mark mentions the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the lusts of other things. Luke specifies the cares, riches, and pleasures of this life. These are what choke the word, the growing spiritual seed. The soul ceases to draw nourishment from Christ and spiritually dies out of the heart. Fortunately for the sower in this parable, some of the seed fell on good ground, and the plants grew strong and healthy and produced a good crop. Of the seed that fell into good ground, the Savior said, "This is he that heareth the word and understandeth it, which also beareth and bringeth forth fruit, some an hundredfold, some 60, some 30. That on the good ground are they which in an honest and good heart have heard the word, kept it, and bring forth fruit with patience." The honest and good heart of which the parable speaks is not a heart without sin, for the gospel is to be preached to the lost. Christ said, "I came not to call the righteous but sinners to repentance." Mark 20, Mark 2:17. He has an honest heart who yields to the conviction of the Holy Spirit. He confesses his guilt and feels his need of mercy and the love of God. He has a sincere desire to know the truth that he may obey it. The good heart is a believing heart, one that has faith in the word of God. A knowledge of truth depends not so much upon the strength of intellect as upon pureness of purpose, the simplicity of an earnest, dependent faith. To those who in humility of heart seek for divine guidance, angels of God draw near. The Holy Spirit is given to open to the riches of the truth. Merely to hear the word is not enough. We are asked also to meditate on the word and to put it into practice in our daily lives. Then and only then we will be like the good soil. This is the kind of soil that Jesus wants us to be grounded. What kind of soil are you planted? My prayer for all in the hearing of my voice is that all we will be all that soil that when the word is heard, we will understand and do what it says and put it into practice in our daily lives. And as the seed takes root, our lives will blossom and produce a bountiful harvest where we will finally hear the words, well done from Jesus' lips. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for this message that even spoke to me, where we all need to be planted on good soil. Help us from today to study your word and really imbibe it in our lives. We will be examples of you. And may, as we go through this presentation this morning, that our hearts will be blessed and we would learn of the hydroponics and all the issues concerning it. And we will be good farmers in the end, is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Yes, amen. And thank you so much, Sister Edwards, for such a powerful message. A message that we definitely, most definitely need today. That message about the sower. So let us continue to make sure that the condition of our heart is it's so good that we will be able to accept and hear God's will. All right, and let us also let us pray that we'll continue to be planted on good soil. Two very powerful messages that came out of this morning's devotion. All right. So as we continue this morning, we want to welcome with us one of our postgraduate students in the Faculty of Food and Agriculture at the university. His name is Mr. Brandon Murphy. He is actually from Tobago. And he lives in Trinidad right now as he studies, and he commutes very often, going back home on weekends. This morning he has agreed to teach us about hydroponics. So earlier in the week I may have sent to you all, I think I did, a listing of the materials that are needed in preparation for today's class. All right. I hope some of you all were able to get them. If not, there will be recordings of this lesson today so that you can always follow up on it. And I'm sure that Mr. Murphy will be quite happy to guide you all if during the week or in the weeks to come, you all intend to start doing some building. All right. So without further ado, it's already 16 minutes into the session. I want to introduce and welcome Mr. Brandon. Mr. Brandon, can you show yourself to everyone? And I think you'll be able to share your slides with us in a while. All right, in addition to that, I want to introduce you to our hostess, who is Miss Stasha Green. So she'll be taking your questions. Is Stasha there? Is Miss Green there?
Hi, yes, I am. Good morning, all.
All right, good morning. All right, but I'm not seeing Brandon.
Hi,
Brandon disappeared.
I just shared my screen, so I'm trying to figure out how to unshare my screen.
How to unshare, okay.
Just give me 1 second. Hello.
All right, sure. And you can still put on your video so that we could see, everybody could see you.
Okay, let's see if I can do that then.
All right.
Brandon, have you figured out how to unshare your screen?
Not as yet, but I'm going to start a video. I think yes, you can see me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi,
so
everyone.
I believe, I was going to say, I believe if you put the cursor higher up, a drop-down screen should come, and then it should say stop sharing screen.
Okay. Tell me, you're seeing a ASUS backdrop right now?
Yes.
Right, that's my screen. Right.
Okay, so you don't want to stop sharing your screen?
No, I don't need. Are you all seeing me? You all not seeing my video?
Yes, we're seeing your screen as well as your video.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Hi everyone. Good morning again. Well, we're here to talk about hydroponics. The idea here is that let's see if we can go through the basic principles of hydroponics and by extension, soilless agriculture. And right. Yeah, let's see if we can go through the basics of soilless agriculture and the principles of hydroponics. And hopefully this could be a prelude for next week's class, which is about aquaponics as well. Feel free at any time to ask questions. Of course, these information will be shared to you all. Even if you don't have all the materials to do the practical today, I mean, we can also provide the instructions. I think that document that Dr. Isaac shared before would have some of the instructions as how to build those systems as well. So it would have had one for a small system that's like a tabletop system, the DWC, and we'll talk about all of those things after. And there's a bigger version of it that expands to about 30 plants for like a home garden, which is the NFT. Of course, all of these two systems are actually the core of what hydroponics is, and you can now expand on that to make bigger and commercial systems. All right, so without a further ado, let's see if we can start today's class. All right, can anyone tell me what do plants need to grow? Anybody could tell me what plants need to grow?
Soil. Go ahead.
Yeah, soil.
Everything
Anything
that's
else?
on the screen.
Sunlight,
Water.
All right. Well, today's class will just show you all that you don't really need soil to grow plants. All right, and you don't necessarily need sunlight. You need light, but not necessarily sunlight. All right. Yes, but essentially these are the things that are common to us to know how to grow plants. In this class is about hydroponics. So what we want to do is basically talk about what is called soilless agriculture, soilless planting. All right, that means we're not getting our hands dirty with any of the soil, and it means therefore that we need to supply the plants with all the nutrients they need to survive that we would have been getting from soil. So hydroponics is part of a train of thought, a school of thought about soilless agriculture. And soilless agriculture could actually be broken down into three main branches. You have hydroponics, you have aeroponics, you have aquaponics. Of course, hydroponics is growing plants using water or nutrient solution without any soil. Aeroponics is basically growing those plants by misting the roots of the plants with your nutrient solution. And aquaponics, of course, is growing plants and some other aquatic animal using no soil as well, or very little soil. All right. So as I said earlier on, agriculture is not just about planting in dirt anymore. It's you can actually use water as your major growing medium. All right, hydroponics is the cultivation of plants in water. It's a growing technique, of course, without using soil, where the roots absorb the nutrients directly from the water itself. All right, it was first introduced to the Scholar Society by this guy right here, which is W. F. Gerkel, and what he had initially wanted to throw this idea as was actually aquaponics, but of course that was already taken some time back ago. Well, that's of course during the plants, using plants and fishes to grow, to cultivate. So I have a video here.
Oh, yes, my son coming from.
Global population of over
Please tell me you can hear.
7.5 billion people and rising.
Yes, we can hear.
Great.
How can we continue to feed the world? In 2015, a super El Nino caused mass flooding and high drought around the globe that resulted in major crop failure, leaving an estimated 10 million people facing hunger. Mongolia, for example, lost an estimated 80% of their crops due to drought and harsh conditions. But what if we were able to save 100% of all food grown? And the food we grew could be in our own homes or in areas otherwise too hot or cold to grow vegetables like lettuce or tomatoes. or in space as we travel to other planets. Hydroponic crops can be the answer to feeding our hungry and growing world population. Hydroponics comes from the Greek terms hydro, meaning water, and ponos, meaning work or labor. Unlike conventional crops, where a seed is dug into soil, hydroponic crops are grown almost entirely in water. Situated in a greenhouse or any closed structure, hydroponics plants rely on a steady supply of nutrient-enriched water in place of soil. Using a small inert medium, such as gravel, sawdust, or sand, the seed is fully submerged in water, where everything from temperature, CO2, and oxygen are carefully gauged as it grows. The benefits of replacing soil immediately eliminates pests, plant diseases that destroy crops, and weeds. Although you may be thinking hydroponics uses more water because it's soilless compared to conventional farming, only 1/20th of the same water is used. That's because everything is regulated, recycled, and reused. This creates a more stable and higher crop yield, reducing loss and waste. In addition, the labor involved in upkeeping and mending the plants is reduced significantly. Perhaps the most significant benefit of hydroponics is its advantage to be grown in large urbanized cities, where fresh fruits and vegetables can be difficult to come by. Hydroponics isn't restricted to farmers or those with lots of space and money. In fact, if you have ever stuck a plant stem in a cup of water and saw roots grow, you practiced the basic forms of hydroponics. In 2015, NASA's astronauts bit into the first hydroponically space-grown lettuce aboard the International Space Station. And with plans for launches to Mars, the future of farming is sure to be out of this world. Having been around since the ancient Egyptians, hydroponics is not new to the world. What makes it revolutionary is the opportunity to efficiently provide stable crop sources to every and any part of the world, eliminating crop failure, water waste, and pesticidal usage. The technology needed to sustain our hungry population is in our hands. All we need is a seed dropped into a little water. And in time, the hopes of our world fed and grown into sustainability will become a connected living reality.
So this was a really good video I found from 1 Minute Videos. It's on YouTube. I love following the YouTube channel. Basically, this gave a synopsis as to what hydroponics really is and the advantages. It's basically the synopsis of today's class. All right. Now you can see here hydroponics has been here. It's not new tech. It's nothing new that we have been doing. It incorporates modern technology, yes, but it's been there. It's been practiced there since biblical times, and even maybe before that. It's actually a natural phenomenon. All right. A good example of hydroponics is sure you all may have seen water lilies growing on top of a river. All right, that's natural hydroponics right there. That's as natural as it can really get. All right. So basically what the video would have talked about as well is what do really plants need to really grow, right? And sure, from the your primary school, secondary school, somewhere along the line, you would have seen that plants need to conduct something called photosynthesis, and that's basically how it grows, and that's carbon dioxide, water, glucose, and oxygen. Nothing there in that equation mention anything about soil, and that was just a plug-in joke there, right? That you do not need soil in order to grow plants. Some of the benefits that the video would have talked about is, of course, you're using no soil. So some of us who don't like to get our hands dirty, like myself, you don't need to worry about that. You no longer have to put your hands in dirt. You have water savings. You can actually save, I think I read an article recently that hydroponics help you save almost 85% of water. A good example of that is a study was conducted where we were trying to find out how much water does a lettuce really require to grow. And how much you all think lettuce require, how much water in total for a lettuce life cycle of 4 to 6 weeks do you all think it needs to grow? Can anybody tell me? Make a guess? I'm seeing messages. I'm wondering if this is for me.
8
Okay,
ounces,
I'm
1
seeing
liter.
okay,
Okay.
let me drag this across here. Great. Someone saying 8 ounce, someone saying a liter, some saying a cup. Really half liter. Really nice guess. It's actually 4 liters of water for its entire life cycle. All right. But how much do you think that you water in the soil? How much of that water, how much water do you think you put in the soil to water that lettuce? Yeah, someone saying gallons. Hey, think about it. Someone, whoever use like I mean, I am guilty of that. Using a hose to water my plants, and you know, because you're seeing the sun so hot, you're spraying on the plants, thinking, oh gosh, maybe this would help, but actually, it's doing more harm than good, right? That's because it's just so much water the soil could absorb and trap, and the rest actually leaches out. All right, but yeah, that's an example of how hydroponics saves you on water. Faster growth. Now here's the thing, and most of my examples will be about lettuce. It's not that hydroponics is only about lettuce, don't, but it's just the easiest crop to actually do and to really experiment on. But faster growth, let me give you an example of that. You know that lettuce takes 4 to 6 weeks to grow in soil, right? In hydroponics, if you're using the same environment, you can grow that lettuce within a 4 weeks range. And let's even push it a bit further where you have something called control environment agriculture. So that's where you're actually growing inside of a room, a container, or something like that. Of course, you're using hydroponics. It's similar to a greenhouse setting. And it will take no more than 2 weeks to grow that lettuce. All right, so that's how hydroponics actually could help with faster growth. I actually have pictures I can send you all maybe later on, or even my YouTube channel where you can see I have a mini E-frame home garden hydroponics. And I tried to see if I could capture videos from the first week all the way up to the 4th week, and you would see how drastically these plants actually grew. Right now, I'm actually trying to work on doing a time lapse so you can actually see, you know, from seedling to the time of reaping. But let's go on. Higher yields. Of course, hydroponics, what going on here is that hydroponics is also part of an agriculture system called controlled environment agriculture. And basically what we're doing there is protecting the plants from, we're actually helping the plants to focus more on growing than actually fending off pests and diseases. That is actually on us. That's on us, the growers. We would actually help the plant fight off the diseases and the pests. And one way to do that is actually not just relying on chemicals or anything like that. So there are actual mechanical ways and also organic ways that you can methods that you can use to prevent the plants from these type of attacks. All right, and we'll go through them. Like for example, hydroponics is actually mostly elevated off the ground. That means that you're already able to deny some of those soil-borne pests from actually getting into your plants, like worms, for example. All right, or well, what we call worms, but like caterpillars as well. All right. Of course, and this also leads to my third point, which is that you use less pesticides. All right, because you're employing mechanisms other than to protect the plants, other than the pesticides, you of course decrease your use of pesticides, which of course means healthier plants. All right, let's go on. So yeah, we talked about this. Oh, no weeds is another example. A lot of commercial agriculture farms would rely heavily on weedicides, because what goes on is basically who could mechanically go there and weed out most of these weeds from the beds. So hydroponics actually helps with that, because you're doing soilless agriculture, you're not giving weeds the opportunity to grow, right? So which evidently means that you're using less weedicides. Some people even talk about greater quality and taste for hydroponic produce. This picture you see here is actually lettuce. It's a mixture of ruby red, oak leaf lettuce, red leaf lettuce, and I think bronze is to the side there. And basically, this is to show you the quality of produce that you can get here in the tropics, of course, right? Well, this was in a school in Diego Martin in Trinidad. This was in legitimately in the back of their school that they did this setup, and they had very little maintenance to do. All the kids needed to do was actually just watch the reservoir to make sure it has enough water in there. All right. And it leads to another point where you can grow in any condition. Remember, I told you all about that grow plant factory, that grow room, right? What hydroponics helps you to grow plants in almost any conditions, means seasons here. Like, for example, you may have crops that only grow due to some certain climatic influence. And sorry, just getting a message. Okay, light in my background. I would see how I can do that. Hold on. Yeah, so growing in any condition, you may have crops that that only like for example sorrel that can only bear due to its life sensitivity. All right, because of hydroponics, you're able to control the different elements of that environment to help that sorrel bear before its time naturally. All right. Small growing area. This is a good example here with this picture as well. This system holds 60 lettuce. All right, and this dimension here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so it's 5 feet by about 7 feet in length. Right, and if you're doing this in soil, you'll be using almost 2 times to 3 times the amount of space to grow this much lettuce. Of course, I'm not just an advocate of hydroponics by just telling you all about the advantages. There are disadvantages to hydroponics, and one of the major disadvantages is the initial cost of the hydroponics system. Hold on. I hope this helps. Okay. So yeah, sorry about that. The initial cost of the hydroponic system, because hydroponics is mechanically intensive, meaning that you'll have to get things like pumps. Of course, you saw there in the previous picture, PVC pipes, fittings, all these things. It becomes, most of these things actually are non-recyclable stuff. Of course, you can't use recyclable stuff, but the entirety here, as I'm getting at, is that you need to get things like a pump, for example, and that thing isn't cheap sometimes, depending on the size of system that you want to do and where you're at. Other things is simple things as you may not require as much labor in terms of every day you're weeding out, you're pulling out weeds and you're tilling the soil and stuff like that, but you are still required to look at the system to ensure that there is no signs of pest and disease attacks, because this can ripple throughout the whole system quickly. You also have to look at things like leaks and stuff like that, which can test on your plumbing skills, I can tell you that, all right? And so it doesn't physically require labor, but sometimes you have to be there. It requires a lot of attention. All right. Some high level of expertise may be required if you're doing it. Depends on how big you're going. We're talking about, and we'll touch on it today as well. We're talking about like how much nutrients are you supposed to put, because you can lead to an example of, you remember the plants are depending on you, the grower, for everything that it needs. And from the moment it doesn't get the slightest thing, it can flop. All right. There are some waterborne disease or that can spread really rapidly in the system. Remember, this is a recirculating system. This is something where all the plants are sharing specifically one resource, which is in this case, the nutrient solution or the water. All right. Pests and diseases can remain a big risk, of course. All right. Because basically what we're doing is BB in the plants. We have to put up the defense mechanisms for the plants to grow, because it's not out there in the open environment to be hardened then to these pests and diseases. All right, so just a quick recap as to what are the comparison between hydroponics and soil. You're not using any soil. You can grow faster. Use less water. You don't have to weed anymore. You have nutrient efficiency and you use less pesticides, of course. Nutrient efficiency because in a sense, you're not, remember I told you all about that water in the lettuce and like half of that water that you're using actually leaches out. Imagine when you're putting nutrients inside of the soil as well and you're watering that same lettuce or that same crop. When you're watering it, half of the nutrient that's supposed to be locked into the soil actually leaching out because it's just so much the soil can absorb. So how does hydroponics work? Well, of course, you need a water pump, right? Some can be inside of a reservoir. This right here is a reservoir or your nutrient tank or your solution tank, a mixing tank. Basically, it's that container that stores the water or the nutrient solution in this case. So you can have a submersible pump where the pump is actually inside of there, or you can have what you call an outboard pump, which is really outside. But most small systems, most home garden systems will actually have it inside the pump inside of the reservoir tank, because those pumps are way cheaper than having those that are outside. You have what you call a grow tray, or what I like to call a grow channel as well. Basically, this is the container that you'll be using to plant in. It's going to house some of the water that's going to directly feed the plants. You have this black thing right here, which is called a net cup. Basically, and I'll show you some examples of that after. I think I also posted it in the instruction manual to build the systems. These net cups are basically like your planting basket or your planting cup. You're going to be putting your seedlings and your substrate inside of there. All right, of course you need light, and we'll talk about this just now. Notice here, this is not sunlight. This is artificial light, right? And I'll talk to you all what are some good artificial lights that you can use, of course. All right. You have your plant nutrients. Most times, if you're buying it readily mixed, that means it's in a watery form. You would have a nutrient A solution and a nutrient B solution, and I will go into those things later on. But this is essentially what a hydroponic system is about. Notice here that you, not sure if you can see it on this slide here, on the left-hand side of that slide, you would see a system with what looks to be a big rectangular looking thing above your water pump. Notice that you're seeing air bubbles coming out of there, and we'll talk about that just now too as well, that hydroponics require your nutrient solution to be as aerated as possible. This is critical for the plants to grow, absolutely critical. All right. Great. So what are the things that we need to do before we build a hydroponic system? Well, you need to choose the appropriate site. You need to choose a very good site. Now, what are you looking for in this site? You need to ensure that if it's outdoors, that there's adequate lighting. All right. You need to ensure that the plants are able to get at least 4 to 5 hours of sunlight. All right. You need to look at things like temperature as well. So even, you notice light and temperature goes almost hand in hand. Of course, if you have more light, especially in the open, you'll also have higher temperatures, and you do not want your reservoir or your water system to be boiling hot. I been to a client, a friend of mine's system recently, and he has a system outside. And basically what goes on is he has one of those blue container drums, and I test the water. Outside, the temperature is about 35 degrees Celsius, and his drum is almost 45 degrees Celsius. And he's wondering why the plants are dying. And this is exactly why the plants are dying. The water is almost boiling inside of there. Being, of course, exaggerative, but the water is so hot that the roots are unable to survive in that temperature. And because of that, he has a lot of decaying roots. Decaying roots means the roots aren't able to uptake the nutrients, so then eventually the plants will die. All right. You also need to look at potential impacts of diseases and pests. for example, before you put up a system and you're looking at your site, you need to ensure that your surrounding, the parameter of the system is not near a high bush or something like that can host a variety of pests. One example of that for me right now is stink bugs. You all know stink bugs by chance? Has anybody ever heard or seen what a stink bug look like?
I have heard, I think I've seen one.
They're really, really one of the major pests in hydroponics. I am now coming to learn, right? Literally now coming to learn about that one, because where I'm staying now, the area is, it has a lot of stink bugs. I didn't even know that, and it really destroys my plants. They literally eat my plants out like locusts, but they're cool. Yes, they call bush bug as well, Julian. All right, so those are the things that you need to look for when it comes to site selection in hydroponics. You also need to know what are the appropriate system or design that you want to use. And we'll talk about the different type of designs and the different type of systems for just now. But let's look at this here. The system that you're seeing here in the second thing is like basically a flat tabletop system. Could you imagine if you were to put that in a hilly-like setting? It may not do too well, because this system actually requires, this design actually requires something to be as level as possible. And if it is that you're actually doing it on an area that is actually on a hill, or have some kind of incline, then it means therefore you will have to design the system in such a way to ensure that you're able to have it level. So in other words, you might have this side being taller than that side, of course, when you're building the frame, right? And then we need to talk about choosing the right medium. Now, yes, the net cups, the system hydroponics is all about soilless agriculture, so you're not using any, well, when you hear medium, most people think about soil, but you actually have to put something inside of that net cup. And we'll talk about all those type of things just now too, right? What are the things that you would use to anchor the plants into the net cup to ensure that it doesn't blow away? And what are the different materials that you can use, and the advantages and disadvantages of each one of them? Of course, it's all environmental, and depending on the design of your system. So this here gives a quick synopsis to me, or a blueprint as to what are the different resources that you need for hydroponics. What are the different resources that you need for hydroponics and how you can implement them, all right? So basically, like for example, we talked about land. You know, land is a space is of course needed to do your hydroponics. You need to identify where you're getting it. That's part of your plan. Of course, when it comes to the design, you need to have a layout. You need to understand, is this a flat land? Do I need to, is it incline? Is it bumpy? Do I need to flatten it out? Stuff like that. Of course, what are the equipment? Is a part of the procurement. What are the things do I need to prepare this land? All right. And here you have the implementation process where you're actually setting up the system. And sustain means maintaining. So you, of course, depending on the type of designs that you have, you may need to do some, and of course the terrain that you have, you may need to do some cutting if it's lawn and stuff like that. All right. Same idea, let's go with, for example, fertilizer. You need to identify your source of fertilizer. Where are you buying your fertilizer from? Is this the correct type of fertilizer I'm using, right? Of course, buy your fertilizer, know how much you're gonna put inside of your water, and of course, test and add if required, all right? So basically, and you all will have this information, right? But basically, this is a cool implementation process for all the different types of resources you need for hydroponics and how you can, put them to work. So let's talk about the different types of hydroponics here. All right, we can categorize. They have a lot of categories for these things. They have a lot of ways they like to classify these systems. But two of the major types of classifications are actually what you call static solution culture and continuous flow culture. And a static solution culture is basically where you have your water, your nutrient solution that's not moving, it's just there. And this is one of the most popular hydroponics that we don't even realize that we do. For example, I'm sure a lot of us actually cut flowers at some point in time and put it into a vase of water, yes? That's static solution. Now, one of the reasons, and I will get to that just now, of course, when you cut those flowers and you put it inside of the vase of water, what happens to that plant, that flower, eventually, most times? What do you see happens to it? Can anybody see?
It dies.
It dies. And why do you think it dies? Who said that? Could anybody tell me why do you think it dies? Some grows roots, and
Because
we'll talk
it's
about
not getting, yeah, because it's not getting oxygen, I think.
That's correct. Oh my gosh, you hit the nail on the head, right? It's actually not just about a lack of, well, actually oxygen is a nutrient, but it's not just a lack of nutrients when we talk about nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. It's actually because of lack of oxygen. And I'll explain to you just now why oxygen is so important for hydroponics and for plant growth, period, especially in the root zone, all right? Some do grow roots. We are lucky to have some that actually grow roots, but that's because their oxygen requirements were actually lower comparatively to those that actually need that much more oxygen. And even though they grow roots, some of them eventually flop because they use up all that oxygen that was inside of the water so some would have eaten the oxygen slower than some, in other words, that I'm trying to say. All right. So that's static solution. That's a very good example of what static solution is. And continuous flow hydroponics of continuous flow culture is actually what comes to mind when you think about hydroponics. That's where you have the pump and you have some growing channels, whether it's pipes or buckets, and basically that water is moving up inside of there and stuff like that. All right. All the things here that you can read on your own. A good example of that continuous flow, as I was getting at, is the NFT system. That's the nutrient film technique. And basically, this is one of the most popular system, I think, used maybe throughout the world. I know it's highly used in the Americas and here in Trinidad. And it's perhaps one of the most, the cheaper of the systems that you can use in terms of continuous flow. All right. I actually have a video I can show you all later, and I can post it up, where we use bamboo to grow hydroponics, right? Where we use bamboo in the NFT technology to do hydroponics. Yeah, but anyways, so what you have here is basically your reservoir. Of course, you notice here there's a pump inside of the reservoir. Remember I said that this pump could be either inside or outside, depends on the type of pump that you have. One could be centrifugal, that means it's outside. One could be submersible, that means it's inside. And basically this pump pumps a thin stream of water, a thin film. I'm trying to use another adjective other than film, but basically it's a narrow stream of water that the roots of the plants basically touch that water. All right, and that's how it uptakes its nutrients. All right, that's why it's one of the cheap of the solution systems to use. Of course, this system has its disadvantages. Of course, it means therefore it would not be able to help the plants tolerate high heat conditions. So you may have, especially when it's seedling stage, you may have a lot of mortality. Because the seedlings weren't able to shoot out enough roots to touch the bottom of the grow channel or to touch that thin stream of water. What are the type of crops that you can grow here? Of course, it's things like lettuce, arugula, watercress, many seasonings like your chive, your celery. Oh gosh, chive, I love chive. They can grow in almost any kind of conditions, right? Celery, pak choy can be used as well there. All right, Swiss chard as well, and even spinach, right? Those leafy type vegetables. You have another system called a deep water culture, and basically, okay, sorry, I noticed we have a question here. So hydroponics can work if you don't have a pump. Yes and no, depends on the design of the system. And that's one of the drawbacks of this NFT system here. All right, if the pump's not on, if for some reason electricity goes and there's no water, the pump is not able to pump the water into the grow channel, then it means this grow channel here doesn't have any nutrient solution. And of course, the plants will go through heat stress and wither given some time. All right. So most hydroponic system, yes, requires a pump. Of course, those that doesn't is what we call a static system. And we'll go into a design that actually can help you grow your plants without using that much water or using a very expensive pump. We'll go through that just now. The deep water culture. This here is one of, which is actually the follow-up to what I was going to tell you all about. Deep water culture do not necessarily require a water pump, but it requires an air pump. And this is one of the one of the systems that I think I put up the instructions for as to how you can build one right at home. It's perhaps, I think, one of the systems that you can construct at a cheap cost. You can recycle stuff with it, and to build it, of course. And I think it requires less energy to do the system. All right, it's basically cutting a container, putting your plant inside of that container and plugging in an air pump inside of it. That air pump is like a fish tank pump, right? That blows bubbles, that blows the oxygen for the plants in order to grow, right? Hence reasons why we need oxygen for the plants to grow as well. All right, so deep water culture you can also think of it like that water lily growing on top of the river. That's a natural way of doing hydroponics. That's a natural way of deep water culture. All right, plants that you can't grow in there, of course. You use this a lot for aquaponics as well. This is what is highly adapted for aquaponics, this type of design. The type of crops you can grow, of course, those basil, kale, lettuce, okra, Swiss chard, pak choy, mince. You can grow your watercress as well, and even your seasonings. Seasonings could be grown in almost any of these systems that we talk about here, right? Tomatoes as well can grow in this type of system, and cucumbers too. So basically, your system design actually facilitates what type of crops that you can grow, and how you look at it is in terms of its root structure and its stalk structure, right? So if you have, for example, this type of system, an NFT system that uses small 2-inch pipes, you need to look for a system, you need to look for crops that does not shoot out too many roots, like, for example, tomatoes, as compared to something like lettuce. All right, because what happens is a lot of the roots will grow up into this root zone here, and basically clogs up the pipe. So you'll be starving these plants here of water if you're using something like a 2-inch pipe, right? That doesn't facilitate too much space. DFT, deep flow technique. This is actually a hybrid of the two that we just talked about, the DWC and the NFT. Basically, it's using the DWC techniques and the NFT technology. So basically what I'm saying is that just like how the NFT you're using pipes here to put the plants in, to house the plants, you're using pipes here as well for the DFT. But instead of a thin stream of water that touches the roots of the plants, you're now able to bathe the roots of the plants with the water, similar to the DWC, where the entire roots are submerged underwater. All right. And this type of system, I think I like to advocate for mostly for our Caribbean region, because we have so much high temperatures that the plants go through so much heat stress that you may need to find ways of cooling down the plants other than, its natural thing as the winds and stuff like that. So one way you can do that is cool down the root zone. And one way to do that is actually to flood the pipes with water. Of course, this type of system can be expensive to to put together, to build, because now you're required, and it's not here. I think I need to put it in. Well, actually, it's supposed to be here. One thing you're required is a water pump and also an air pump. All right, because now you need to make sure that the system is, the water zone, the root zone, sorry, is fully oxygenated. I think we touched on why we need oxygen inside of the water. Now, this NFT system right here actually doesn't require a air pump. And anybody could tell me why they think that is? Why it doesn't require air pump? Can somebody tell me why the NFT system does not require air pump?
Because I see
Sorry.
outside as well as the water is not coming.
Miss Gladys, we're getting a lot of feedback. I'm not certain if it's because of your volume of your device. You could try to lower down and see if that helps. Brandon, I see Deborah hand is up. I'm not too certain if she wants to answer the question that you just asked.
Okay.
Go ahead, Deborah. All right, I'm not too certain if Deborah is still.
I would like to answer the question.
At her device.
Why am I getting this feedback? Oh.
I believe what. All right. So I believe what Ms. Gladys might have wanted to see, or I'm hoping, is actually because there's a thin stream of water here, there are actually air inside. You all seen my cursor by chance? You all seen my mouse cursor?
Yes, we can. Mm-hmm.
Great. So that's a good pointer. That's a good pointer for me, right? I usually use a pointer. All right. So.
Brandon, there are two responses from the chat from your question. Ken just said because the water is continuously moving, and Joy said the water level is lower.
Joy is almost right, and also Kendra is almost right. They both have basically the same idea, but they need to fuse it together. So one is actually because the water is moving, that actually helps stir up some oxygen inside of the water. All right, and the other reason is actually because the water level here is much lower, so you have a lot of roots that are open up to the air in the space of the pipe. And basically what that means, what we call those type of roots are oxygen roots or air roots. So that their sole purpose is actually to capture oxygen from inside of the air, whilst the roots that are submerged underwater is only there to capture the nutrients. Right? So both are correct. Both are correct. All right. And I think I saw a question above that asked if you need, what was it there? Right. What system would I recommend for home? And well, if you have a submersible pump, would you need an air pump? Actually, it depends on your space, the type of plants you want to grow, and the design of the system you want to go with. All right, and we're trying to get to these things just now. I was just explaining, if you only have a submersible pump, then an NFT system might be the one that you want to do because you don't have an air pump. All right, but of course, the disadvantages of that, as I was explaining, is you have plants that will go through high heat stress. All right. There are ways you can you can actually mitigate that. You can actually water the seedlings manually until you see they shooting out roots, which is about a week time, and then you can leave them and they grow, and that's it, right? So there are ways, a mechanism that you can use to mitigate some of the disadvantages of the system. Some of them are actually really common sense, but we'll go through. So back to the DFT system, of course, you need an air pump for this system because you're now flooding the pipes with water. You're beating the roots with the water, the nutrient solution. And of course, you're not leaving any room for natural oxygenation to happen, sorry. So you would have to put in an air pump to blow some bubbles into there, to blow some oxygen into there. And of course, these are the different types of crops that you can grow, which is almost everything that we talked about before. All right. This is a design, right? It's not necessarily a technique or even technology, but basically it's a design. And why the A-frame system, and why is it up here as a type of system, is because of one of the major advantages of this design, which is basically it helps save a lot of space. All right, so basically if you were to use a tabletop system, then you'll be using this 2 meters by 15 meters, and you'll be able to only grow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pipes on that tabletop system, similar to the NFT system, all right, or the DFT system. But because you're able to grow also vertically, all right, you can maximize your 2 meters space and grow double the amount of plants that you want to grow. And actually in those same videos that I talked about, where I can show you all my home setup, it's actually a miniature version of this, right? I'm using 3 feet by 3 feet of space. That's 9 square feet of space to grow almost 40 plants. And I'm not sure if you all can see what that really means, but basically it's about it's about 9 of your 1 feet square tiles at home, your 1 feet square tiles at home spacing to grow 40 plants in. All right. This is the A-frame that we have in our on campus in the university, right? This uses the DFT technology, all right, where we are flooding the pipes with water to grow the plants in. All right. These are actually red lettuce. I don't think the picture did not do a good job at it, but I can show you all pictures as well of how it looks when it's really flourishing. This was when it's just transplanted. Next type of system, of course, is and we talked about vertical planting for a moment, but the next type of system is called the vertical system, or the stacky pot. And basically this is where you're able to grow, instead of horizontally flat, you can grow going up and down. All right, and these are very good examples of how you can do that. You have to use, sadly, some soil type of substrate, but of course it depends on the design again. You have to, this type of system use soil substrate, some soil like substrate, which is called cocoa peat. All right. It's not soil, so in other words, the plant cannot grow on cocoa peat alone. It will die because cocoa peat does not have that much nutrients for the plants to grow. But it's just there to anchor the plants inside of the water and trap moisture, anchor the plants inside of the system and trap moisture in the root zone for the plant. All right, it's pretty. A lot of people likes this one. You can convert this one to recirculating, and I think someone just asked me if the DFT system is readily converted or to DWC. Yes, that is true. The DFT system is already converted to DWC. The DFT system is basically the NFT system, and you're converting that NFT system to DWC. The DFT system is a hybrid between the two. All right. The NFT system is just a thin stream of water that flows through the pipes. All right. And the DFT system actually helps flood the pipe with water then, similar to what the DWC would do, right? All right, so let's keep going. This is a good example of planting vertically without using that soil substrate. As you can see here, the water is dripping like raindrops onto the root zone of the plant. And this is the outer part of the plant right here, right? The outer part of the system, which is basically a pipe, a 4-inch pipe here, right? We come to the next system, which is called an undercurrent system, similar to a DWC. However, the DWC, you're only able to use an air pump alone. We want to go a bit further. We want to be able to recycle this water with a network of containers. All right. Why this is done is to ensure that the network of containers are actually fed an even distribution of the oxygen as well as the nutrient solution. All right, to ensure that all plants are growing optimally. right? You mostly use this for top-heavy plants like your fruiting plants. So we're talking about things like your tomatoes, your melangen, your peppers and stuff like that. Of course, the major drawback of it is its initial cost. Remember, you're using a water pump and you're also using an air pump here, right? These are, oh, sorry about that. These are very good examples of what that recirculating system is. It's also called a Dutch bucket system as well, right? That undercurrent system is also called a Dutch bucket system as well. Ebb and flow. This one is mostly using hydroponics. It's a media bed type of system. So basically what you're doing is filling a container with substrate, more like gravel or clay pebbles, and we'll go into this just now. And basically from time, it uses a pump, and from time to time, the water from here is pumped up to the top and gravity feeds it back down, all right? And basically it's just a self-watering type of system. All right, it doesn't really require oxygen pump because the medium here acts like soil. Because remember, when you're planting in soil, you're not using oxygen, right? You don't have an oxygen pump for when you're planting soil, and that's because you have air pockets inside of this soil, and that's exactly what's going on here. You have air pockets inside of any root zone that helps the plants to grow, right? As I said, it's mostly using aquaponics, and this is a very good example of how it's done. The aquaponics water is pumped on top here, and then gravity basically feeds it back down to the aquaponics tank. This is a very good example of how you can do that system, the ebb and flow. Who would think that grow beds or anybody know what a grow box is? Does anybody know what's a grow box? Anybody know what's a grow box by chance? Yeah. Would you believe if I tell you that that's actually hydroponics if you're using something like sharp sand as your medium? Grow boxes are basically grow boxes is basically a system that you're using something like sharp sand or gravels as your planting medium. And basically you have to use some fertilizer water, some fertilizer solution in order to grow the plants because there's not much nutrients inside of that medium itself. All right, and that's actually hydroponics. As I'm telling you all, that hydroponics is not something that is new to the world or anything like that. We have been doing it, it's just that we just didn't know that we were doing it. All right. Drip systems. A lot of farmers use this using what you call a fertigation type of method. And basically that's where you're using fertilizer inside of a container or reservoir. I'm trying to see if I can show you all that. You're using a pump, of course, that pumps the water and it drips to the root zone here, right, from time to time. Basically, that's also hydroponics as well. All right. Yeah, this one is pretty much the most common used system that you didn't even know is hydroponics at the time. All right, Julian. This system here, this system is a system that takes over the internet about how you can use hydroponics without a pump. And I think we already explained why you need a pump actually, but it's called the Kratky method or the Kratky method, however you want to pronounce that. Basically, you've done this before. You've put a plant inside of a vase of water and you've seen it shoot roots and it grows. But from time to time, this system can fail on you because, of course, the plant uses up all the nutrients inside of that water, that stagnated water, and there's no more oxygen. So if you want to keep the system up and going, what you'll have to do is constantly change the water or the nutrient solution from time to time. All right? Let's go on to substrates. These are the things that you'll be putting inside of the net cups or the container for the plants to grow. All right? You have a variety of types of substrates here. We have them in terms of categories. We have grains and pebbles. So you have perlite, you have vermicult, you have expanded clay pebbles, which is actually in the background here. You have also things like river rocks as well that you can use. All right. You have gravel, sand, right? These are all types of substrates that you can use in hydroponics, but we'll get to to which type of substrate that you should use, which type of substrate that you should use with different types of designs, all right, of hydroponics. Other types of substrates, you have a foam type of substrate, which is basically rock wool, sorry, and Oasis cubes, right? Oasis cubes is also called floral blocks for those flowers enthusiasts who likes to buy biological flowers. Those are the thing that you'll be sticking the flowers into, those green spongy material. Fibrous materials, you have cocoa core or cocoa, I said it as cocoa, what did I say it as? It has another name, you know. Cocoa core, I think is, or cocoa peat, right? You have parboiled rice, the husk of it, and you also have hemp. Sorry about that. You also have hemp, right? The hemp fiber. And we'll talk about how that helps as well. Another type of material that is not stated here that you can use is regular old toilet paper, right? Yes, you can use toilet paper to grow plants as well. I think we know about this from primary school. Also, cotton. You can also use cotton and sponge, right? So let's go. I think I talked about that. Different types of substrate. We have rock wool. Rock wool is perhaps the most unsustainable, but the most used in Western culture for hydroponics. Basically, you're able to set your seeds in this spongy material. It mimics, it's synthetic, right? But it mimics, for me, I find the wool of sheep and goat. All right, that texture, that feeling. All right. It absorbs a lot of water. That's why it's highly used. It absorbs a lot of water, which is good. It has good aerations as well. So aeration capacity. So that means you don't have to heavily rely on an oxygen pump for this one, or air pump for this one, right? Some things, right, some bad things is that it's not recyclable. So you only get to use this once per plant, all right? Which to me sends up the cost of doing hydroponics on a whole. All right. But yeah, it's mostly used. You can use it to set your own seeds and do nurseries. Expanded clay pebbles. This one I think is really taking over hydroponics in Trinidad and Tobago. A lot of people are recently starting to go to this, and one of the reasons why is because it's clay, so it traps soil, it traps moisture. Sorry, all right, and you're able to use those soil germinated seedlings easier with this system. So you know, if when you go to a garden shop, you have your seedlings. Their root zone is covered with the soil, that potting soil. You can put that type of seedlings inside of a hydroponics system in a net cup and use the clay pebbles to help anchor that seedling inside of the net cup. And that's why it's mostly used. It's that easy then to use. All right. It is recyclable, so you can use this type of material here for a good time, a good majority of the time. Most times, the reason why you purchase more of these things, these clay pebbles, is because you have lost them. They're like erasers. Anybody ever use out an eraser? I think it's difficult to use out an eraser. All right. Most times when you're buying erasers, it's because you're replacing lost ones. All right. Coconut fiber or coconut core or coconut husk, whatever you want to call it, is also a thing that you can, medium that you can use. However, it should only be used on those non-recirculating systems. So like, for example, that vertical system that we talked about with the stacky pots, you can use it there, but you should not use it in something like the NFT or the DFT system, because that coconut husk eventually erodes into the water, which eventually reach to the reservoir and evidently clogs the pump and damages your pump. So that is why you do not want to use something like this in a recirculating system, right? Eventually it acts like soil, so it erodes and it eventually clogs up your pump. Excuse me. So if you're using this in a recirculating system, you will encounter those type of problems. However, there are people who have employed mechanisms to get rid of that. What they have done is use a stocking, all right? But at the end of your outflow, and we'll talk about that too after. But I really suggest that you only use this type of system, only this type of medium, only for systems that you're not recirculating the water, right? You have grow stones or river rocks. Please don't let anyone fool you. These are simply river rocks. All right, they are colorful river rocks. And they act just like clay pebbles. All right, these are things that you can't germinate seeds in them, just like clay pebbles, but you can reuse them. These are things that you can get in your natural environment. These are river rocks, okay? So this is, do not be fooled by anybody that says, you know, it's some special type of rocks that encourages growth. Of course it encourages growth, all right? All it does is anchors the root into the net cups and trap moisture, right? And aerates the root zone, just like typical gravel, all right? The only good thing about buying these in the store is that it's sterilized. All right, so you don't have to worry about any pests and diseases. But you can sterilize your river rocks at home as well by simply using hydrogen peroxide. All right.
Okay, on the back of the ear. Okay, can you see clear?
Someone coming on?
No, I think that was somebody's mic who came on unintentionally.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. So here we come to the next type of medium that you can put in your net cup. It's called the Oasis Cube or horticulture cubes. Basically, it works just like your rock wool. Sorry, it works just like a rock wool, but it can crumble, unlike rock wool, right? Which it means that it can erode over time and eventually clog up your pump. But it can, it doesn't do so, like, unless you're doing a crop that is unless you're doing a crop that is very long term. Like, for example, if you're doing things like peppers and tomatoes, then I wouldn't suggest that you use this type of medium because it stays so long in the water that eventually it decomposes and clogs up the pump. It turns into dust, all right? But it's very good for seeding. Another one that's good for seeding is this rapid rooters right here. It's actually made out of vermicult. It does erode into the water same way. However, you can, you know, of course, put a filter at the end of your system to ensure that it doesn't meet the pump. All right, but it's really good for certain seeds. I must admit, it's really, really good. Can be very expensive though, depends on where you're getting it from. Weirdly. This is what I'm talking about, the floral foam, all right, which is basically what a lot of flower enthusiasts would know about. You can cut these up into smaller cubes, into like rock-like or pebble-like forms, and use them to grow plants to put inside of a net cup. It doesn't erode as fast, which is good. So you don't have to really worry about that filtration to clog up the pump. It works really nice when you cut it up as smaller cubes for like aeration and absorbing the water for the root zone. I like to use this a lot and it's really cheap. In Trinidad and Tobago, it's like $15 a block, 15 TT dollars a block. And I mean, come on, this one block alone can do 140 plants for me. All right, when I cut it up into smaller cubes. So I really like using this if I'm using, of course, soil seedlings to plant in. So how do you choose the right substrate? Number one, substrate also helps with understanding, number one is understand your technique and process. If it is that I am using NFT system or a recycling system, I do not want to use a substrate that erodes and clog up my system. I think that was the subject of the 5 minutes talk I had just now, right? So understand the type of system that you're doing. If I am doing something like the stacky system, right, that is drip to waste, or it's not recirculating, I don't want to use clay pebbles and foams for that, because then what happens, it doesn't trap the water, it doesn't trap the amount of moisture I need in the root zone for the to foster growth for the plants. All right. Number two, understand the climate for transplanting a crop. And this is really, really cool because here's this, right? You remember that NFT system that we talked about that does not help your plants with the heat stress? Well, if it is that I was supposed to use something that was spongy, like for example, rock wool, then I don't have to worry about if my pump cuts off. I mean, yes, I have to worry if the pump cuts off, but I don't have to worry as much because that rock wool is super absorbent and it holds a lot of water in its root zone. So it means therefore the crops can survive for a good piece of time without having to worry about water. All right. Understand your cultivation process. Basically, when we talk about that, we're talking about things like matching your medium with the growing and selling process. So let me get it straight for you all. If it is I want to match my medium with how am I going to be marketing my product. For example, if it is that I'm selling these, let's say I'm selling lettuce, and of course I wouldn't just put a hydroponic lettuce inside of a bag. If I'm doing that, then I need to make sure that the medium that I would use is not something like clay pebble that doesn't trap moisture inside of the root zone. Because after I harvest this crop, after I pull out most of the roots out of this crop, I need to make sure that the very little roots that's there is still having some level of moisture to keep the crop alive, to keep the crop looking perky and desirable. Sorry about that, guys. And desirable for the plants to grow, for the plants to stay alive, to sell. Sorry. Right? Estimated external cost. Remember I talked about rock wool being very expensive. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have to import it. The only place I know that makes it is in those Western countries like the United States and Canada and China. Well, China's Eastern, but yeah, right? But if it is that I'm trying to do something small at home and I want to cut cost, then I wouldn't rely on rock wool. I would more rely on that river rocks that I can get naturally just near a river or something like that, right? Or gravel, right? That's an example of what I'm speaking about there. Sometimes you just have to use what you get, and that's true. All right. A lot of times, like for example, I did a system in I'm not sure if you'll ever heard of a place in Trinidad called Blanchisseuse, right? And Blanchisseuse is basically is like a beach village, then a fishing village in Trinidad. It's really remote, and why I didn't want to use other substrates like clay pebbles or even oyster cube or even floral blocks is because that it will be difficult for these guys to actually, or was kids, the primary schools, to actually get those things replenished. So I tried to show them that they can actually use the same river rocks that they can get from the beaches or from near river sides. All right, and they were thrilled for that, right? Right. Well, I was actually thinking about taking a break, but I don't. But this was actually slides that I used to teach at UE as well, right? So let's see if we could power through. We are almost done. We're typically halfway there. We just have to talk about three major things: maintenance of the hydroponic system. We have to talk about the nutrients of this system. What nutrients you have to use for the system, and we have to talk about one more thing. What is it? I can't remember, but we'll get to it. All right. So maintenance of the hydroponic system. These are typical checklists that you must do on a daily basis. All right.
Brandon?
Yes?
Before you power through, can I ask a few questions, please?
Of course.
All right. So Lady J is asking, is it possible to use ozone diffused in water to increase the oxygen for a hydroponic system?
If you can use, sorry, I didn't hear what is the product?
It's ozone diffused in water.
Is ozone diffuse oxygen tablet? If it is, yes, you can use that. You can also use hydrogen peroxide, but it's not a very good substitute. Like it's a temporary substitute then. All right. You need something that will continuously be blowing oxygen inside of that water. You need something that will be continuously oxygenating the water. Now, when I said that you have to use a air pump for your system, that is one way that you can mechanically blow water in air inside of your system. One other way that you can use is if you have good plumbing skills, you'll put on a bypass from your pump back to your reservoir so it can act like a waterfall that beats. So basically the pump pumps water to the system and also back into the reservoir, right? And how that water flows back into the reservoir is acting like a waterfall that beats up inside of the reservoir, inside of that nutrient tank. And that by itself naturally oxygenates the water, similar to a waterfall, right?
All right. The follow-up to that question is I think you answered it, is there an optimal oxygen content for the system?
Scientifically, yes, but there's no, there's no such thing as too much oxygen, right? What you want, in pen and paper terms, what you want is you want something that, if you're talking about air pump here, you want something that blows 1 liter of oxygen or 1 liter of air to 1 gallon of water. So for example, if I am building a system that holds 20 gallons of water, then I need to buy an air pump that blows 20 liters of water per minute. Right?
All right.
So that rule of thumb, of course, is only enforced, I think, mostly for commercial systems. When you're talking about home systems, so long as you have some level of oxygen, it is pretty much fine because it's not that much plants. And when I say that not much plants, I'm saying something that is under 50 plants that actually would require you to have an air pump.
All right, thank you. Another one. Galaxy Tab is asking how large can a tree be in order to grow in a hydroponic system?
How large can
trees be in order to be grown in a hydroponic system?
Well, so I wasn't on this trip, but Dr. Isaac told me about in China that they were growing mango trees in hydroponic systems.
Mango trees?
Yeah,
What?
mango trees, right?
I would like to see that picture.
Right, so you can, in China, right? So you can't, the sky's the limit here, guys. Literally, the sky is the limit. All right, you can, so long as you're giving the plants the necessary solution, the necessary nutrients that it needs to grow, you can grow pretty much big things, right?
All right, and I have one question of my own. No, go ahead.
Yes.
What you were saying?
No, I just see on the chat list as well, we have what size of air pump for a home system. Now, I'm running a home system that has 30 plants right now, right? And actually I have two. I have one for 60 plants and I have one for 30 plants. But what I'm getting at is that I'm using a typical aquarium pump that I sent it in a material listing, but basically it blows like 2 liters per minute. All right, of water, and it does good. It's doing good. All right, so it's something like once you're growing to me less than 50 plants inside of your system, yes, you need to think about oxygen, but it's not that big of a factor to grow for growing your plants. All right.
Thank you. And my question was similar to somebody who asked if you must have a pump in order for it to be hydroponics. I would have seen someone planting vegetables on their front porch and the PVC pipe was supported on their railing. And I don't think I saw any pump or any pipe to show that there's a pumping system.
What that person would have been doing is what they call the cracky method. And the cracky method. And what I was trying to explain there in that slide was basically you will be having to replenish that water a lot, like ever so often, to ensure that the plants are able to grow. The more the plants are developed, is the more it would require essential nutrients like your NPK, and even oxygen, right? So if you're planting in a stagnant water, what happens is the plant eventually dies because it uses up, majority of the times it's because it uses up the oxygen inside of that water. So how do you keep that plant alive? By inducing oxygen
watering?
You can add more water in there, yeah.
Okay.
Right? But as the plant develop, as the plants get bigger, it would require much more of the nutrients it needs to survive.
Okay, so the cracky method would require continuous
changing the
watering.
Water. Yes.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
Yes, not a problem. I think we have one more. Can you use different crops in D-flow technique? Of course you can. So hydroponics, first time users for hydroponics, I would tell you all, please do monoculture. Grow one plant at a time. All right, it's easier that way because we have to talk about the nutrient level for each plant, and each plant could require different level of nutrients, and we'll talk about that just now. But keep in mind, when we're talking about nutrients, think about it like a copper morbi, right? Some people like it bitter, and some people like it. Well, I like to say bitter and watery or watered down. All right, or diluted. That's what I want to use. Diluted, right? But keep that in mind when we're talking about nutrients for a moment. If you're doing hydroponics, doesn't matter the design of the system really, but if you're doing hydroponics for the very first time, try to stick to planting one crop. And then you can graduate to doing 2 and 3 different type of crops, right? Like I am now mastering growing multi-crops like 5 and 6 crops at the same time. And what I did, how I get to that point was actually trying to figure out what crops are compatible with the same nutrient level of water. All right. Yeah, right. So keep that in mind for when we're talking about nutrients and planting multiple crops. For now, if you're doing hydroponics, even soilless agriculture in a whole, try to keep it to one organism, one plant at a time. All right, let's go on. So when we're talking about maintain, so we talked about building a hydroponic system. So I'm trying to recap what we talked about this morning. We talked about the different types of hydroponic systems. We talked about what you look for before you build a hydroponic system. What are the different designs of hydroponic systems? All right. And now after building that hydroponic system, I want to talk about how are you maintaining that system? The after build, the post build of that. So you plant your system already, you're happy, everything is going good, they're growing. You perhaps maybe already putting nutrients in, or you're not going to put in nutrients. That's the process that we're talking about here. But some of the things that you must do on a day-to-day basis after you have planted in your system is this checklist right here. You're checking the humidity levels for the plant. In other words, you want to make sure that the plants isn't going through any kind of heat stress or nothing like that. All right. Remember, the plants are depending on you for everything. It's like a child. It's like a very needy child. All right. Watch the system to ensure that it's working properly. So you're making sure that there's no leaks, there's no unwanted runoffs or clogs or anything like that. Because trust me, one small problem and it look. I can give you an example. I went to Tobago just recently there, and I left my systems. One of them is like a water, it's like a waterfall system. So I recycled some of my water bottles, and basically it's one water bottle feeding another water bottle like a tear, and it goes down, right? And because one of the roots of the plant grew so big that it clogged one of the tear, and sadly enough, it's the very first tear, right? What happened is the water dripped from the roots and enter out of, so it changed the course of the direction of the flow of the water, and the system ran dry for a couple of days. It happens, all right? Just because of that small thing, just because I did not take time to check the root zone that I knew that would have basically have the change the direction of the water. I underestimated how fast the plants would grow, to be honest with you, all right? Check your water levels in the reservoir. If it's below the pump level, you know you're in red zone. You need to make sure on top of that system. All right. Check your nutrients in your water. There is a meter that you can use to do that, and we'll talk about that just now. pH as well is important. All right. Just look at the plants, see how they're doing. Like for example, most of the times because I do a lot of stuff. I get myself into a lot of stuff to do, and most of the times I just look at the system to make sure, just as part of my maintenance, just to see how the plant's doing. If it droopy, okay, you need water. All right. If I notice it droopy after I add water when I come home in the evening, then I know, okay, something is wrong. Maybe it's the nutrients. Sometimes even if I see the slightest yellowing of a leaf, I know, okay, something is wrong. I need to go and check up on it. All right. Things like that. Keep track of temperature. This was important. As I told you, I had a friend recently who called me and his system was flopping and he can't understand why. And it's simply because outside is 35 degrees and his temperature in his water was close to 40. And I was like, man, you need to add ice right now. All right? Learn to identify good bugs and bad bugs. Not all bugs are bad. Believe it or not, not all, a matter of fact, not all organisms are bad. I have wood slaves in my garden, and I am so happy for them because they're the thing that naturally kills my stink bug infestation, right? I'm happy for my lizards. All right, yes, they might eat one or two of my leaves, but say what? All right, at least they're getting rid of the bad bugs for me, which is the lizards. I am very happy for butterflies and bees. So I put flowers around now, right? And these are good things because what they do, they attack the bad bugs for me. They protect my system. So I want those things around. And shockingly enough, I love my dog too because my dog see how bad I hate stink bugs, and she too is literally catching them and eat them. I don't know why she eat them. She's just crazy, but she eating them, right? And the last thing is to make sure and keep a log. Make sure and record what you're doing with your system, right? Make sure you know how much water you're adding in there, how much nutrients you're adding in there, because this is an ever-growing learning process. All right, having a system is always an ever-growing learning process. It's gonna keep you very well invested in it. All right, so let's go. One thing we talked about was light, and we talked about this to ensure there's a very first step in building a hydroponic system. You're checking your space. You need to make sure you have adequate lighting. Now, there are things to know about if you're building a system outside. You have sunlight, and you have also artificial light. All right, and what goes on is, for example, what plants need to grow, what type of light plant, or what in the light that plants need to grow to have photosynthesis is something called photoactive radiation. It's called PAR, photoactive radiation, and basically that is the element inside of a light that kickstarts the photosynthesis process, right? Hence the word photosynthesis as well. All right. Now, all lights emit PAR, but at different concentration, at different levels. All right. So the sun, of course, emits perhaps one of the greatest amount of PAR. It's the best PAR out there. All right. But you also have things like fluorescent lights. You have LED lights. And I think we're going to get to that just now, which is here. You have LED lights. You have fluorescent lights. These are some of them here that you can see on Amazon. And I even tried to snapshot. Now, these prices might have changed. This is about a year old, so they might fluctuate. All right. I know these here, these high-powered ones here are ridiculously expensive now since we are in the age of them decriminalizing marijuana. So a lot of people want to go here and for the LEDs as well as a cheaper option. Sadly enough, it's a cheaper option, but it's getting very expensive. All right. When you're talking about LED lights, make sure and look for the full spectrum LED grow lights. That's what you want to use there, all right? Because the full spectrum is the one that has the highest, emits the highest amount of PAR, all right? I talked about fluorescent light. Yes, the same lights that you have, perhaps will have inside of your home are also good grow lights, and they contribute to grow. So you might actually see this a lot. You might have had a tree that is planted right outside near a street light or something, and for some strange reason that tree is always flourishing, and it always looking green. And the reason being is because of that. It gets light from the sun, and it also getting light from the street light. It also getting PR from the street light, right? So it's able to do photosynthesis almost 24/7. One sad thing about that is, of course, you're basically having the plant on steroids. It's not able to sleep, it's not able to rest. And of course, you're fastening, you're putting the life cycle of the plant at a faster rate, right? Basically, you're amping up the life cycle of the plant. And that's exactly how we are able to grow lettuce in 2 weeks' time in a plant factory, right? Because you're able to do photosynthesis 24/7. Temperature, right? Anybody could tell me what they think is the ideal temperature for, yeah, plants and cereal is funny. Anybody could tell me what is the average temp, what do you think is the adequate temperature for growing lettuce?
I'll go with what the slide says, 37.0.
Oh, craps, it's there. Yes, all right, somewhere between, oh, no, not 37, well, 37.0 is the temperature there, but no, the adequate, the adequate temperature for growing lettuce is actually between 15 to 25 degrees Celsius, much lower. But the temperature that we get here in the Caribbean is average of that 37 degrees Celsius, which is way more than is actually needed for growing lettuce. And that's bad. That's bad, right? But luckily enough, we are so blessed to have hot days and cold nights, or perhaps cooler nights, I should say. All right, so that's where the lettuce actually strive, because of the cooler nights. All right. And in your water, like I told you all about that friend of mine whose water is like 45 degrees Celsius. One way that he could actually cool down that water is actually instead of adding water to top up the nutrient, the reservoir with the water, instead of topping up the reservoir with water, he could have actually add a block of ice, like a ice cream bucket. So what he has done is basically freeze an ice cream bucket of water almost every night. And when he has to top up the water, instead of putting water from his tap, he just drops that ice block inside of there. And that cools it down ever so often. It doesn't cool it down every day, but at least every other day it's able to cool down, or every 2 days it's able to cool down. Another way is actually using some refrigerant. There's a thing that I'm learning now I'm actually trying to build one at home rather than, yeah, someone saying 60 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm actually trying to build something at home. You can buy it. It's a refrigerant. Basically, it's something that passes liquid through, and it cools it down, and so it's like a tap water filter for a moment. It has an inflow and an outflow. So in the inflow is where you're going to be attaching your pump from a reservoir, and the outflow is basically going to go from the filter itself to the system, and between that it's able to cool down the like a radiator, right? Like a radiator for a car. It's able to cool down the water significantly before it feeds it to the system. So I'm now trying to build one at home. Some of my computer friends showed me how they can water cool their computer using the same radiator type of system. So I'm now trying to see if I can build something like that. But I have seen videos on YouTube that's what people do when it comes to heat stress for hydroponics, right? So you can do something like that. Right, nutrients. This is perhaps, to me, it's the boringest part of my class, but it's the most important. Sadly, it's the most important part of the class. All right, you need to pay attention to this part, because building a system is one thing, adding the water, making sure you have adequate environment is another thing, but making sure that the plants get the amount of nutrients it needs to survive is perhaps the most pertinent part of a hydroponic system. All right, you're going to see changes drastically. All right, so I had something there. Plants can't live on water alone, right? That was a adapted quote there. If anybody could tell me where they think I know that from. Plants shall not live on water alone, and really and truly, they can't. It's hydroponics, not just about adding water into your system and having the plants grow. You have to put something in there to stimulate growth, which is your nutrients in this kind of case. You can use conventional synthetic fertilizer, which is in that liquid or powdery form. It's basically that blue substance for NPK and stuff like that, that granular form. Or you can use organic fertilizer in hydroponics, which is basically compost tea. I think you might have touched on that before in the past lectures. Or aquaponics fertilizer, which is going to be something you'll learn about next week as well. All right. Aquaponics fertilizer is something that you naturally brew because of the fish waste. All right. And you're using that for the plants to grow. Let's go. So, basics nutrients for hydroponics. You have nutrients in hydroponics, you have, or for plants on a whole, you have macronutrients and secondary nutrients, and you also have trace elements. All right. So for the macronutrients, we know this from primary school level, or even the most primary form of agriculture. Plants nutrients is NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Plants definitely need this to grow. This nutrient in order to grow. Secondary nutrients for hydroponics is what we call magnesium and calcium. Plants need these things as well in order to grow, because you're not able to get it from the soil. All right. So, and the water doesn't have that much of that in there. Right. Trace elements. Trace elements are those, it's nutrients that plants need to grow, but at small amount. And these are elements that you can find in most water, in most sources of water, luckily enough. All right, so we're good with that. These are, if you all would have seen the thing that Dr. Isaac would have added earlier on, these were the type of nutrients that you're supposed to get if you want to start up a hydroponics home garden. All right. Now, these are, I'm not promoting a brand here. All right. But these are just the brands that I know works, and you can get it on Amazon. All right. So I'm not promoting the brands. I'm just promoting the product itself. All right. The core product itself. So NPK, it's usually that, yes, that bluish type of substance. You can't get it from that 2020 fertilizer, that Nutrex fertilizer. You can use that as well. That's a good substitute. All right. You have calcium nitrate. It looks like balls. To me, it looks like miniature, how to explain that, boy? It looks like, you know, those styrofoam balls. It looked like that to me. All right. And you have Epsom salt or magnesium sulfate, which, well, I think a lot of ladies who would do pedicures and manicures, I think you all know about this for sure. And I'm sure you all know where to get this, right? Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate. Nice name for that. All right. But basically, it looks like salt, right? Like that tiny grain of salt. Nice. So again, this was just a nice formulation. These are information that you're going to get, right? So you can read up on it, you know, here, right? But these are the different types of nutrients and what they do for the plant, why the plants need them, right? How do they contribute to the plant growth? So that's what this slide is talking about here, all right? Oxygen. Now, this is perhaps one of the major nutrients plants need to grow, and I think it also has been the core of our conversation whole morning. Oxygen, dissolved oxygen to be exact. All right. I like to say that oxygen, plants requires oxygen in order to obtain the nutrients. So my metaphor for that is that the oxygen is the plate that carries the nutrients to the plant. But my question to y'all is, and let's see if y'all can answer it after, what do you think is a knife and fork? So oxygen is the plate that carries the nutrients to the plant. What do you think is a knife and fork for the plants to take the nutrients? Anybody can tell me?
Roots. Someone, Oliver said roots. Kendra said roots as well.
Okay.
When they said water.
Root, in my metaphor, is the hands. The water, in my metaphor, again, is like the hands. But what do you think is the knife and fork? What do you think is the apparatus to bring that food to my mouth, to the root, to the plant's mouth? In this case, the roots might be the mouth then, and the water is the hands. One saying pump, I like leaves, good try. Air
No,
pump.
I think it's the air pump as well.
Remember, that's the oxygen, right? The air pump blows the oxygen, and that's the plate, right? What I like to say is the knife and fork is the pH in the water. How acidic or alkaline the water is. The pH acts as a knife and fork that helps the plant uptake the nutrients. You must have a neutral balance of pH in that water for the plants to uptake the nutrients. right? Yeah, so that is my metaphor then as to how we're dealing with nutrients and oxygen and pH. To me, this is in my metaphor vision here. It's what I would put together to describe that story of the plants eating, or I mean consuming the nutrients. All right. So, what are the apparatus that you would use to measure the nutrients in the water? You have to use something called an EC meter, electrical conductivity meter, right? That measures the parts per million of nutrients inside of that water, and in general, the total dissolved solutions or the total dissolved solids, right? We'll get to all of these things here now, right? Now, these meters cannot tell me how much NPK I have in the water, or calcium nitrate, or magnesium sulfate. They can't tell me that, or even the trace elements. They can't tell me individually which one. But what they can do is tell me how much in total I have in there, and how we're going to measure that total. How much are we going to measure that solution is actually called parts per million. All right. Now remember, I talked about when you're thinking about hydroponic solution nutrients here, think about MOBI. Some plants like it. Some people like it bitter. Some people like it like a little bit watery, a little bit diluted, right? So do plants. Plants require nutrients in different concentrates. Different plants require different concentrates of nutrients inside of the water. In other words, is what I'm getting at, right? Some plants like it highly concentrated. Some plants like it diluted. And it's not just a matter of like it, it's a matter of what they can tolerate, all right? Because these nutrients also push off what I like to in layman's term push it as heat. These nutrients push off a certain amount of heat, or a certain amount of stimuli to the plants, the roots of the plants, that the plants could tolerate. Different plants could tolerate different levels of stimuli. In this kind of case, the amount of nutrients, concentration nutrients. All right. Now, parts per million, EC, TDS, these are all ways of how you measure the amount of concentrate of nutrients inside of the system. All right. So, of course, another meter you'll be using is a pH meter, right? I think there's one here, and this is a Blue Lab one here, right? Blue Lab, there's a plug-in here. Again, I'm not promoting brands or anything like that, but Blue Lab is perhaps the best brand of meters that you can use for hydroponics. It's the most accurate I find personally. All right, it is expensive, but it's a very good return on the investment. I can assure you of that. All right. Not only that, but I find it's difficult to mash up a Blue Lab meter as compared to the generic brands. But if you have to buy the generic brands, these are what I would suggest as well, because these are what I use as well. All right. So let's go. As I said, TDS, EC, parts per million. These directly measure the amount of solution or salts or solids that is inside of your water. All right. We will talk about what level, different plants require different level of TDS. I'm not sure if you all could still hear me. The rain is falling really hard, but I hope you all could still hear me. If you hear me talking a little bit louder, it's because the raindrops is perhaps to me louder than my voice.
Yes,
all
we
right?
can still hear you.
All right, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right? Sorry?
I was saying, yes, we can still hear you.
Awesome, great. So pH, right? Remember, I explained to you what's the importance of pH by now. pH is basically the knife and fork. Basically, you have to have a balanced pH. You have to have a neutral pH in your water to ensure the plants can uptake the nutrients optimally. All right. There are pH adjusters that you can purchase. That is pH plus or pH down. All right. Of course, pH down is an acidic type of stimuli, and pH up is like a conditioner. All right, or a sodium. Let me give you some examples of natural ways of how you can carry down your pH. That is pH down is of course using lime. All right, that's a biological way of how you can carry down the pH inside of your water if you find the pH is too high. And if you need to carry it up, you can use baking soda. All right. Ideally, you want your pH in your water for any crop that you're growing to be around 7. Anywhere between 6 and 7, the crop happy, you happy. All right. Now, this here is a list of plants, and this list could be very extensive. I just snapshot this off of the internet. All right, it's a nice guide. I would add it to this slide as well, where you can get this list. But basically, this list shows you the different plants and the different pH and ppm requirements. Remember, ppm measures the amount of solids or the amount of concentrate of nutrients that you have inside of your water. Right? It does not tell you individually the amount of NPK or calcium nitrate or magnesium sulfate, but it can tell you how much it have in total. All right. So like, for example, lettuce, when I am planting lettuce, I want to make sure that my pH in my water is between that 5.5 to 6.5. These are ranges. So this is it. This is like a critical low range, and well, basically 6.5 or 7 is a high range, right? So anywhere between there in a green zone, in a happy zone. All right. The EC, so you can either measure the nutrients in terms of EC or ppm. I like to use ppm. It's a bit easier to remember these numbers than the EC, but whichever one floats your boat is the one that you can use. They both say the same thing. All right. They're like, for example, how people say, some people would say inches, or some people say feet, some people say meters. Is the same idea. All right, it measures the same thing. So if I'm planting lettuce, I need to make sure that my EC in the water is between 0.8 to 1.2 or 560 ppm to 840. This is again how concentrate the water is. Now, if you look at this, let's just look at the ppm for a moment. The lettuce is perhaps the crop that requires the least amounts of nutrient or ppm in the water to grow. So it means, therefore, this water is highly diluted as compared to the others. All right. Now, it means, therefore, as well, that lettuce, I would not recommend that you use lettuce to grow other crops other than perhaps Swiss chard, because you notice here that there is no data. This means that the Swiss chard could go in almost all of these, with all of these systems here, right? So if I was to go something like pak choy, for example, that has a range of ppm between 1050 to 1400, then I could now add perhaps celery inside of my mix, right? Inside of my system. So I can add these, I can plant these two plants inside of my system, so long as the nutrient is between now 1260 to 1400. You notice here, this factor here is between 1050 to 1400. I need to make sure that my celery nutrients is between 1260 to 1400 as well, not the 1680, because that might be too concentrated for the pak choy. Everybody understanding what I'm getting at here?
I am not, probably somebody else or other persons are.
Okay, so let me explain this in a different way. In hydroponics, I would suggest as first-time users to grow only one crop. But if it is that you wish to grow multiple crops, you have to look at the range of nutrients inside of your water, inside of your nutrient solution, right? You need to look at how concentrated that nutrients is inside of your nutrient solution. So my example was with pak choy. Let's say I wanted to grow pak choy and another crop. I need to make sure that my range of nutrients is between, for pak choy, is between 1050 to 1400 when I'm testing the water here. Don't think about how much the nutrients is as yet. Don't think about how much NPK or calcium nitrate I add. For now, think about when I stick that meter inside of that water, what do I need to see on that meter? For pak choy, I need to see between 1050 to 1400. If I want to grow another crop, let's say celery, then I need to make sure that if I want to grow celery and pak choy together in one system that shares the same water, then that nutrient water must be between 1260, the lowest range for the celery, and the highest range for the pak choy, 1400. All right. Does anybody understand what I'm getting at there?
I'd say it's much better.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. So let me see if I can use another plan just to make sure that we cement what we're talking about here. All right.
Okay.
Let's see if I can use another example. Broccoli requires 1960 to 24 ppm. When I stick that meter inside of the water, I must make sure that the meter is telling me a reading between 1960 and 2450. But let's say now I want to grow another crop. What crop do you think I can grow with that broccoli? Anybody can shoot for me? Shoot a answer.
I'd say bean and beetroot, or probably
Bean,
just bean. Bean or beetroot.
yeah, right? Or what about even tomatoes down here? All right.
Yes,
Look at the height
yes.
for the tomato, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea. If I'm supposed to grow multiple crops inside of a system, I must make sure that the nutrient solution inside of that water is compatible for all the plants that I want to grow there.
What
Yeah?
about eggplant, Brandon?
Eggplant,
Yes.
eggplant is similar to tomatoes actually. All right. So it will grow between 1400 to 3500. Oh, look at here as well. Yeah. 1750 to 2450. So if I was to grow eggplant, then I can grow eggplant and tomatoes at the same time. You understand what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Great. Great. So because the eggplant, the lowest for the eggplant is 1750, and that falls within the range of the tomato ppm, which is 1400 to 3500. So I can grow eggplant and tomatoes in the same thing, in the same water solution, right? Someone asks, is it possible to use pH strips to measure the water level? This then would require planting similar plants. Yes. So one thing we had highlight here is that you have to look at the nutrients, the level of nutrients concentrated in the water, but you also have to, and I guess this is what Gladys is also getting at, you also have to pay attention to the pH as well. If the pH is not within the range for those 2 or 3 plants, then you'll have a problem. All right. If they can't synchronize, then they'll have a problem. But in reality, once you are planting between a 6, once you're planting in a water that has a pH between 6 and 7, you're really compatible with almost any plant. All right. So long as your pH is between 6 and 7, that's a rule of thumb naturally. Instead of just looking at the numbers and remembering the book work here. If you want something to keep in the back of your head, so long as you have a pH level of between 6 and 7, you can plant almost any plant in that water. All right. The next question the person alluded to was, can you use the pH strips? That's another form of measuring pH in the water. Yes, you can. The downfall of that is that you're using a lot of those pH strips, similar to like how you're going to be using, if you could get a meter that tests your blood sugar, I think that is better than you using the strips, because then you'll have to be constantly buying strips in order to constantly test your blood sugar. It's the same idea here. You'll constantly be buying pH strips in order to test your pH in your water. But if you had a meter where you can just stick it into the water or stick it into your hand, in this case with the blood sugar, then you're pretty much fine. In other words, you're cutting down your long-term cost, right? Yes, Oliver, I would highly suggest that as a beginner, stick to one plant, and believe it or not, within a couple of months, you'll be able to grow more. You will, your interest, your sense of curiosity would peak to ask to push you to grow multiple plants. But for now, stick to one plant, and then you could try 2 plants and 3. That is exactly how I learned how to do these things. And believe it or not, it is tricky. It's not just as easy as I even talk about today. If it was easy then, all right, it can become a lot more trickier, because you will have plants in terms of the root zones where, believe it or not, plants are like children. They just fight sometimes. All right. In other words, what I'm getting at is that they would fight for the same resource. Remember, it's one resource that they will be sharing, and they will fight for that resource. There are some plants that are greedy, right? For example, mints. Mints like to take up the whole root zone once they grow big, right? And that starve and deprive other plants from actually growing. All right. So you have to look at those things as well. And those things are those things actually are learning processes. It's something that you do as you grow as you learn then. All right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you have the strips, if you have the boxer strips, you can't use the pH strips, right? I'm just saying that in the long term, you might constantly be buying strips as compared to just having one cost of a meter. All right. But yeah. Oh, somebody raised their hand. Are we taking this, Letitia?
Yes, good morning. Thanks for taking my question. Now, I would like to start the hydroponic system at work. At work we have kind of like a high railing. We are usually using container planting now. But the person who would do the hydroponic system for me warned me that possibly there could be a high rate of salmonella coming through these pipes and stuff like that. So I need to be careful. How true is that? And how could I,
Where is the water source coming
avoid that
from?
if that is true?
Where is the water source coming from?
Well, that would be the thing. Cause we have a pipe outside in the yard, so I guess I'm
Mm.
gonna have to attach it onto there.
All right. So, Letitia, what you're asking me, well, the question, I'm trying to follow the question, but I think we would require some more information. Like, I would require you to send me pictures of the area for that. For you to have salmonella, it means therefore that your nutrient solution is mixed with, and I'm trying to look for a proper word here, right? But it's mixed with some farm waste or some waste that is not sterilized, right? It's not treated, untreated waste. If you're doing natural hydroponics and you want to go to more organic ways of doing hydroponics, then you're in your water, you'll be using something called compost tea, which is basically waste water, it's decomposed water, it's basically manure water. But you have to make sure that manure was sterilized and it went through the correct procedures the correct the sanitary procedures to make sure that it doesn't have any microorganisms living in there, like for example, the salmonella. All right. So, like that's what I'm saying. That I think I would need to see some pictures as to finding out where your water source is coming from. But if you're doing something like if you're using synthetic fertilizers that we just talked about there in terms of the NPK and the magnesium sulfate and the calcium nitrate, then you don't have to worry about salmonella because there's no waste. All right, you're not using your source of water is not waste. All right.
Okay,
Someone had
thank you
another
very much.
question. How long can the plants go without pump in the case of a power outage of the pump? Now, I highlighted that early on, but I would reiterate again that depends on the type of system, the designer system that you're doing. All right. For example, the NFT system that has a thin stream of water that passes through the pipe. If there is no electricity, if the pump's cut off, then that plant is more likely to go through heat stress and wither. Right? And one way to help the plants, if you're doing that, if you're doing NFT, was to use a soil medium, like for example, the rock wool that naturally absorbs a lot and traps a lot of water in the root zone. So you can have the plant surviving without actual water passing through the pipes for some time. It is a limited amount of time, but it is going to still buy you some time as compared to having it growing in a net cup that has river rocks or clay pebbles inside of there instead of the rock wool, right? If you were to do something like the DWC or the DFT, the deep flow technique or the deep water culture, where the roots are fully submerged underwater, then that is going to buy you a lot more time if the pump cuts off. All right, Deborah, I cleared up that question there for you. Any more questions? All right, so let's move on here a bit. like I said, this is perhaps the most boring part of this slide, but it's the most important part of the class. We need to talk about, in terms of nutrients, we need to talk about how can you identify what nutrients, since you cannot test the water to find out what specific nutrients the plant need to grow, then how can you identify what specific nutrient the plant need to grow? If you ever come into a situation where you did not put adequate amount of nutrients inside of the water, well, you look at the deficiency, the signs and symptoms of the plant. The plant will be sick. So you look at the signs and symptoms of the plant. And one, of course, easy ways is looking at the leaves, understanding what shade or color is the leaves and how they even appear can actually tell you, actually help determine what nutrients the plant is lacking. All right. For example, on the board here, we have nutrient deficiency for nitrogen. Now, looking at it, you can see here that you will see it mostly in the older leaves, all right, because they're the ones that actually requires the most of the nutrients, all right? So you'll see a light green appearance turn into almost yellow appearance, right, on the leaf itself. The leaf will turn yellow from the stem and becomes weaker in the lower leaves, and of course the lower leaves will drop off, right? So the leaves that are closer to the stem will start turning yellow, and the leaves that are lower will start dropping off, and you'll see necrosis. Oh my gosh, I can't pronounce that word properly for the life of me, right? In other words, the leaves will start looking droopy. That's one way to find out if you have nitrogen deficiency inside of the plant. How you could add, how could you check up on that? Make sure that you remember that pH, the importance of pH in your root zone, the importance of pH in your water. It must be between that adequate range for growth, right? In this case, it was for lettuce, 5.8 to 6.3. But so long as you have it between 6 and 7, you're happy. Your plants are happy, you're happy. All right, that's the first thing you should check for, even when you're seeing signs and symptoms of nutrient deficiency. It might not necessarily mean that you didn't add enough NPK, but it might first be really your pH balance was off in your water. All right, so how can you deal with that? Add more NPK to your water. All right. How much more you need to add, it depends on how much water you have in your system and how bad you see in the NPK and how bad you see in your off from your ppm's region, your ppm range. So let me give an example of that. How do I correct nitrogen deficiency when I'm growing lettuce? I know that when I test my lettuce, when I test my water in the lettuce, it was remember, we know the ranges between 560 to 840. So let's say when I test the water when I use the ppm pen, the ppm meter, and test the water, I see that I have an 840 ppm. I have an exactly 840 ppm, but I have a nitrogen deficiency in my plant. So what is going on? What do I need to do? Well, the first step I would tell you to do is drop some of the water, throw away some of the water inside of the reservoir, add more water inside of the reservoir to bring it back on top, and then add a bit of your NPK inside of the water until you boost it back up to 840. All right, that is the procedures, and I would elaborate more on it further down in the slides, but that is how I would correct the nitrogen level, or any other nutrient level that I have. I will first, if it is that I would first test the water. If it is that I am at my optimum in terms of the range, I am at the highest point on my range, I'm at the peak of my range, then it means therefore I need to drop some of the water in the reservoir and then add the nutrient that is needed. If it is, let's say when I test the nutrient, when I test the water, it was 700. Okay, I'm happy, I'll just add the nutrients then. All right. Can someone ask a question is, can please repeat on the point on how to raise the pH or lower the pH. All right. How do you raise or lower your pH, Gladys? In this kind of case, is simply using pH enhancers. You have pH plus and you have pH down. All right. These are actual solutions that you can go by a pet shop or agriculture shop to purchase. All right. I say a pet shop because you use them a lot in an aquarium. All right. Some natural ways of how you can manipulate your pH in terms of pH down, pH down is actually an acid. You're trying to get to an acid level in your water, so you can use something like citrus, like lemon and lime, right? That helps decrease your pH temporarily. And if it is that I want to increase my pH, mean I want to get it more alkaline, then I can use something like sodium, something sodium based, like for example, baking soda. These are just household things that you could have used naturally in order to manipulate your pH in your water, right? The next question that someone had was, can I use this pH gauge for regular soil also? I am so sorry, but no, you cannot. All right. I haven't come across a pH gauge that you can use for both soil and for water. It's completely two different testing procedures. So that's why you'll be using two different testing apparatus. All right. Sorry about that, Sharon. Sharon, you won't be able to use the same meter for soil and for water. All right. Let's go. So I will just browse through them quickly, but these are information that you will be getting on these slides, right? How to identify the nitrogen deficiency, how to identify phosphorus deficiency, how to identify potassium as well. Notice the difference between phosphorus and potassium here, where the leaves are actually darker in color in the tips as compared to the stem, coming closer to the veins of the leaves, all right? Notice here potassium as well, right? So potassium, it looks, for me, potassium, it looks like it's oxidizing. It's like if metal is rusting. Rusting is the word I want to use. It's yellowing like rusting, and that's how you know you need to use potassium. And when you're adding potassium or phosphorus or nitrogen, is basically the NPK part of the nutrient solution requirement that you would need. All right. Can someone ask a question again about the pH? Can sugar make it acidic? I have never tried adding sugar inside of my hydroponic solution. I don't even know if sugar would make something acid. In chemistry form, yes, it would, but I would not want to add it in hydroponics because sugar by itself also carries trace elements that can make my water toxic. All right. Apart from the ants, the pest attacks from ants and stuff like that, it will also make my water toxic. It would not provide me with the correct nutrient balance that I need to grow any plant. All right. Calcium deficiency. Remember, calcium nitrate is one of the nutrients that we use for growing plants, right? And this is one way to notice that you would see the tip of the plant turning whitish, right? And also notice this. This is not leaf. Please do not misjudge this or misconceive this as leaf miners, all right? Or even dirt on a leaf. You need to be careful with that. Remember, it's hydroponics you're doing it, so that's agriculture. There should not even be mud on your leaves in the first place. But yeah, it looks like that. All right. Iron deficiency. Oh my gosh. So the very first time I was doing hydroponics, I did pak choy specifically, and I did the same thing like you all. Like I went to a lot of workshops and watched videos and stuff like that. And one of the things that they didn't really tell me that you would require for nutrients is iron. I mean, we knew that iron is a micronutrient, but actually it can actually graduate to be a macronutrient for some plants, and pak choy is one of those plants. All right. When I first grew pak choy, I saw it start yellowing, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong? I'm adding nitrogen like hell, and it's not. It's giving trouble. It's not turning back green. What is going on? And then I learned from a old guy who was doing hydroponics. He said, have you tried iron? And I was like, what do you mean? Iron is always it's a trace element. And he laughed. He was like, no, son, you need to buy something called iron chelate. So that is actually one more nutrient that you would need if you're doing hydroponics. So we talk about calcium nitrate, we talk about magnesium sulfate, and we talk about NPK. But iron is also required for some. Iron chelate, chelated iron is actually required for some plants if you're doing things like pak choy and seasoning specifically. All right. It looks like if the plant has a disease, but it's actually not a disease. It's simply iron deficiency. It even looks like if it's nitrogen deficiency, but if you look at the veins of the leaf is actually green, and the outer region of the leaf is where it starts yellowing. All right. So just keep that in mind. This is a good chart that shows the different elements, the different nutrient elements, and what they do to grow the plants. I think I had something like this earlier on in the slide, but this is just to re-emphasize what are the symptoms to look for and how you can correct them. All right. So I think this is coming to the part where everybody wants to know. You're telling me about the nutrients that we need to put into the water, but how much of these nutrients we have to put in the water? I can't pour a whole pack of this calcium nitrate and a whole pack of this magnesium sulfate and NPK. So how much of these things I need to put in the water? Well, really and truly, every hydroponic farmer has their own what I want to call it a recipe, all right, because it's a concoction, all right. But so long as you're keeping between that range that we talked about for each one of the plants, and since as you're keeping between these range of the ppm, you're fine. So you will have to, it's like baking a bread. Some people know how to put the ingredients immediately, with just looking at it, or the feel of the wheat and stuff like that, all right. So it actually comes with experience, but there's also other ways that you can do. There's calculative ways. Each product provider has their way to show you how to calculate the nutrients and for the water. So like, for example, I could tell you my mixture right now, and I don't have it in a slide, but keep this in mind. If I want to grow something like lettuce, then I would be using 2.5 grams of NPK to every gallon of water, and I would use 2.3 grams of calcium nitrate to every gallon of water, and 1.7 grams of magnesium sulfate to every gallon of water. All right, that is just my way of calculating the nutrients needed for the water. That was one easy way that I keep in the back of my head, since I don't have my computer with me all the time, or calculator. All right. If you could look at a lot of YouTube videos, they would teach you as well how to calculate it based on the manufacturer's specifications. All right. If I was to do something like pak choy, then the same rates that I just emphasized for lettuce, I would double it, because I know, and it's really simple. It's because I know that the maximum ppm for lettuce, right, is somewhere between my minimum, it is between my range for my pak choy. So that's how I know how to calculate it in terms of for pak choy. And even celery is a good example of that as well. My maximum range for lettuce is actually, if I double up on that, I can now get my maximum range for my celery. All right, that was my way of calculating it. Of course, if you need help with with adding the nutrients inside of your water, you can feel free to contact me, and I would also share with you my versions of these calculations. Like I said, every hydroponic farmer have their own way of brewing their hydroponic nutrient solution. All right. Approaches to applying your fertilizer. First, you need to test that water. This first step that you must do is test the water. Find out what is the level of ppm inside of that water right now, because you see what happens is, remember I told you that the water naturally have trace elements in there. All right. For hydroponics, for planting, high levels of trace elements is good. I mean, that already means, it's like, if I to test my water right now in my tap, I'm sure I'm going to get something like 200 ppm of water. All right, 200 ppm of nutrients inside of the water, and that nutrients actually just calculate for the trace elements. So once I know that amount, I can now know how much NPK, how much calcium nitrate, and how much magnesium I need to add in order to build up to that range for checking it, for the range of the plants, the nutrient range of the plants. All right. Someone asked some questions. I'm trying to see if I could keep up with the questions as well as talk, right? Can you go back to the previous slide, please? Lisa, could you, Liana, Miss Andrews, could you tell me what slide by chance? Need to take a pic. Oh, Ms. Andrews, we will be putting, I think you would have this information. Like I will be sharing this information with you. So you don't need to really worry about snapping anything or anything like that. You will have it on your at your disposal.
Okay,
All
thank
right?
you. I got it. Thanks.
Awesome. Right. So this here was talking about how commercial providers would calculate it. They would tell you it's 1 per gallon or put 5 ounces per gallon and stuff like that. Right. Like I said, different hydroponic farmers have different ways of adding the fertilizer to their water. But the key thing to keep in mind is making sure that you build up that ppm to that range. All right, that range that we talked about earlier on. We're coming very close to the end. All right. So I know it's Sunday, everybody hungry, I hungry, but we're coming close. All right. We just have 2 more things to talk about, which is nurseries or hydroponics. Yes, you can germinate your own hydroponic seedlings. You can use although you can't use soil seedlings, you can germinate your own seedlings using soilless agriculture without any soil. All right. And it goes back to that toilet paper example I gave earlier on. Remember, I'm not sure if you've ever done this in primary school, but I remember putting beans inside of a toilet paper and have it germinate and seeing how the roots grow to the direction of the sunlight. And not the roots, sorry, the stalk itself goes to the direction of the sunlight. All right, and that's actually a good way of germinating your seeds using toilet paper. All right. Ms. Gladys said, is there a meter available to measure the ppm, etc.? Where is it available? Yes, Ms. Gladys, it's on Amazon if you're from the Caribbean islands. In Trinidad, we also have them. If you want it from Trinidad, I have my own firm that brings them down from the same Amazon, so you can get them there. And it's pretty much the same price as Amazon, don't worry. We sell things as close to price as possible. For someone with limited space, our next question was, someone with limited space, which system is most adequate? Again, it depends on the design of the system and the amount of, well, yes, I understand when you're saying limited space. For example, in my gallery, I do not want to put a stacky tower that drains off then, right? That doesn't recycles. That's called drip to waste. I wouldn't want to put that in my gallery because, I mean, it's going to have my gallery wet when I have to water the plants. But if it is that I'm doing something, I can do a mini A-frame in my gallery that avoids me from wasting an amount of water and having it just wet on the ground, because that mini A-frame means it recirculates the system, right? So it all depends on the design as well that you want to choose. But yes, hydroponics is actually geared towards growing a lot of plants in limited space. Look, someone said it. I use, Miss Gladys, you're using toilet paper to germinate the seedlings. Yeah, it works really good. Why not continuously use it, right? That's the very first thing they taught us in primary school in terms of agriculture, right? Sponges as well. Dr. Isaac and I, Mrs. George and I were actually working on finding out what are some spongy materials that you can use to germinate seedlings. We haven't come to very good conclusions yet, but I mean, it's things in the weekend, right? If I to use soil seedlings, I actually wash it out first. I wash out the soil to make sure that there's no soil in my system, and I wrap the roots gently with some toilet paper, and that works when I don't have any Oasis cubes. All right. Okay, so yeah, you can order these things on Amazon. I think I sent a list. The list that I sent with in terms of the DIY, the build it yourself systems that we were supposed to do, it would have links as to where you can get some of these meters and some of these materials. Right, I know some of these materials aren't readily available in a lot of islands and Caribbean states, but you can order them on Amazon, or you can look for substitutes. I actually gave some examples of some substitutes that you can use, like for net cups and stuff like that. All right. The cost of the meters for in TT dollars, it can range between $180. That's for the cheaper versions of them. The the blue and yellow ones that you see there, and the blue lab ones, which is the most expensive ones, can range somewhere between 2,000 to 2,005, and even some variations goes up to like $4,000 and $7,000, right? But those are ones that actually are very good and accurate, and I know they are long lasting. I still have my blue lab meters, and believe it or not, I sadly treat them very bad, but that's because of how I have to work. Like I forget them sometimes in the rain and stuff like that, and they still work really, really nice. All right. So back to this nurseries and nurseries technique for hydroponics. It all depends now back to it tests your knowledge on the substrates that you have to use, the medium that you have to use in hydroponics. All right. Germinating your seeds, you have to make sure that your pH is balanced. All right, I can't emphasize on that. You have to ensure that when you're germinating your seeds in your water, you have to ensure that your pH is balanced. It has to be between 6 and 7 for those seedlings to germinate correctly. All right. Most people use rock wool. Remember that woolly type of material is the very first thing that we talked about for hydroponics in terms of medium, right? It's not sustainable. It's only something that you can use once, and also it could be very costly because you have to import it, right? But it's it's super absorbent, and it's very good for germinating seedlings, right? And you'll be using it throughout the entire life cycle of the crop. There are ways you can also germinate seedlings other than, or propagate seedlings, I should say. Other than from seeds, you can do root stem cuttings like mint. I don't know how many people know that mint, you can actually just cut it from the stem, put it in some water, it grows some roots, and then put it into your hydroponic system or plant it in the ground. Similar to basil and broadleaf thyme, and a lot of actual, actually a lot of the seasonings. I got, so yes, rock wool is similar to cotton wool. I got a during this lockdown period, you know, they were saying that fever grass was basically the thing to get in order to beat this virus, all right, or to help beat this virus. And I didn't have fever grass in my system. I didn't even think about growing fever grass in my system. And I saw a guy on the road with his fever grass, and I asked him for just a cutting of his root, and I was able to propagate that into a bigger into a bigger patch of fever grass in my hydroponic system. And now I'm actually sharing fever grass with my neighbors. All right. So yeah, there are different ways of propagating. There's tissue culture as well, which is just basically cutting, similar to the same root stem cutting, but you're cutting a part of the plant and use that to grow. You'll see that a lot for, I don't know if you all know of a plant called Wonder of the World. Watch me, that plant is really Wonder of the World. It grows almost out of any part of itself. All right. And it's a good medicinal plant, Wonder of the World. Oxygen is vital, remember that, for root development. So you need to make sure that it's well oxygenated where you're propagating that seedling, whether it's germinating seedling or the tissue culture. All right. This is a very good example of how to germinate your seedlings. I do have a video. I'm not sure if you all want to see it now or if you all would want to watch it afterwards. You all want to watch it now? You all want to see a brief example of how to germinate your seedlings?
Yes, that would be a good break.
Great. I know I'm pressing with the times, but if you bear with me.
Now.
All right, awesome. We all in this together. I like that. I like that. All right. So let's load it up here for me. But these are two good videos of step-by-step instructions of how you can germinate your seedlings. All right. In the meantime, it's loading up. Does anybody have any question they want to ask me, or they want to clarify certain things? Everyone good?
Hi, Brandon. Someone asked, where can I get rock soil?
Where can you get the?
Rock soil, wool, sorry, rock wool.
Rock wool. Rock wool is on Amazon. That's in Trinidad and Tobago. I know I bring it down as well, and I know of the university bringing it down as well. But generally, I would say try Amazon. Amazon is where I source it. That's the only place I know to source it. All right. A lot of these things you can get on Amazon. I was just trying to figure out how am I getting my chats back up and going. I think it disappeared for me.
Well, I'm looking at the chat, so if there are any questions or comments, I can always let you know when you are ready.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The video is loading here, so just give. Right. Can you all see the video? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Great.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another quick episode here on the Omega channel. We're going to do seed starting for hydroponics in 4 simple steps. It is so quick and so simple, and I find that a lot of times people overcomplicate things. So we're going to do that now. So the materials you're going to need is you're going to want a kind of a humidity dome seed sprouting kit. You can get that pretty much any garden center. You're also going to want with that a heat mat. Heat mats are so important when you're sprouting seeds because of the fact that they require some higher heat to sprout really well, and you're going to have better germination rates that way. Another thing you're going to need is your rock wool. Rock wool is just your growing medium of choice because it's not organic and it won't rot or anything like that, and the roots can grow right through it and grow well in it, and it just helps them to have something to hold on to. Then you're going to need your seeds. You're going to need a holeless seed tray and some water. So step 1, you're going to want to soak your rock wool. Pre-soaking your rock wool helps to increase germination rates. We're just going to dump a bunch of water over there and let it just sit. Okay, we're going to let it sit for about 5 minutes. So I will see you in about 5 minutes. All right, so it's been about 5 minutes, and the rock wool has been soaking in this this water here. What we're going to do is we're just going to dump it back into the container it came in. It has been well soaked. It is well saturated with water, and there we go. Just dump that out. You don't need it to be that wet. Now what you want to do is just make sure that when you drop it like that, no water drips out. That's going to be as wet as you want. Now what we're going to do is part 2, plant the seeds. We're going to just take our seeds of choice. We're going to start some cucumbers. And you want to put, depending on what you're starting, for cucumbers, I put 1 seed in. But for something like lettuce, you might want to put 2 or 3 seeds in. Go with what you feel comfortable with. So part 2 is just drop the seeds in the hole. There's nothing specific about this. It's so simple, and you don't need to overcomplicate things. So many people say, you know, oh, you got to cover up the hole, got to keep them dark, got to do whatever. Just put the seeds in the holes. You're fine. Fine. Don't overcomplicate things any more than you need to. All right, seeds sprouted. Step 2, done. Look how fast this is going. All right, step 3. Make sure you put them on some heat. You're going to want to take the seed. This is a holeless seed tray, meaning there's no holes in here. Oftentimes seed trays have some holes that allow water that is extra water to flow through the bottom. You don't want that. These are hydroponics. Hydroponic means water. So we like to have a holeless seed tray so that when they dry out a little bit, we can pour some water into the tray and it'll absorb. So we're going to take step 3, put them on the heat. Done. That is so simple, right? So then we're just going to plug this in or keep it next to a warm window, put it on top of a fridge. If you don't have a heat mat, really simple. You just want to keep it warm so that it can sprout. Then along with that, you want to put the humidity dome on because humidity keeps the water in there from evaporating out, and it's going to help keep the humidity in because higher humidity equals faster germination rates. So that's step 3. Really, really simple. Then step 4 is once they've sprouted in about 4 to 5 days for the cucumbers, 2 to 3 for the lettuce. Once you start seeing sprouts, you do not want to fertilize. Simply fertilize after you see the first set of adult leaves. You can simply mix up some fertilizer, mix it up inside of your water solution, take it in here, When they're still in the seed sprouting setup here, don't move them to your systems yet. You want to make sure you get a little bit of fertilizer in there. Dilute it about half of what you would normally use, so half strength. You don't want it to be full strength because there's a lot of young tender roots that have not been acclimated to any fertilizer yet. So you want to go light. I typically go half strength. You can go as little as a quarter strength. So 1/4 or 25% of what you would normally use. Pour that in there. Just pour it around the base. Obviously, you'd have some sprouts in here, but for the sake of the example, we're doing that, pretending there's some fertilizer in there. And so the fertilizer will then soak up into the plants. You can put the humidity dome back on and grow them in this setup for about 2 to 3 weeks. Wait until you have some nice established plants. Wait till their root systems are definitely starting to form. You're going to start to see the roots crawling out throughout the bin or throughout the tray there. And then once you start seeing that, they're ready to go into your hydroponic system. They're going to be ready to go into some nice full strength growing solution, and they're going to grow very well for you. So I hope you all enjoyed. Hopefully this helps you out, and please do not overcomplicate this. It is so simple, and I see so many people doing it. So just keep it to these 4 simple steps. There is nothing else you need to know, and you will be successful with your hydroponics. I will talk to you all.
All right. So that's as simple can get, yeah? I think that's as simple as we could bring it for you in terms of germinating your seedlings for hydroponics. All right, it's that simple. It's pretty much the same way as how you would germinate seeds for soil agriculture. All right. So things to keep in mind when you're doing this germinating your seedlings hydroponically. Keep the seeds need to be warm. Make sure there's moisture, and that helps germinate the seed. If you start your seeds in your system, there's less chance of it getting diseases. Now, many times, this is the advantage of germinating your own seeds, right? Many times I buy a lot of seedlings from my plant shop, and when I do bring them home, I bring them home with pests and diseases. A lot of times I get leaf miners, I get aphids, which is sad for hydroponics. We don't want those type of things. Even simple things as white flies. Now, if it is that I have to get seedlings in Trinidad, like if I have to get them in abundance, I usually take a 2.5-hour drive to Davie in South Trinidad just to get quality seedlings. And that's because a lot of the plant shops here do not practice good husbandry, good practices, and that leads to a lot of diseases. The seedlings inherit a lot of diseases, and that by itself, if I'm to do something commercially, I don't want, because that means there's more headache for me when it comes to hydroponics. Remember, the plants are a bit more susceptible to diseases and pests. All right. One thing to always remember is that the seeds require light as soon as they germinate. So even as soon as you see them germinating there in that dome, if you purchase the dome, all right, don't open up the dome just yet. Leave it there to grow until you see secondary leaves, and then I would say open up the dome. And that's actually just a couple of days before you're ready to transplant. All right, that by opening up the dome, you're actually giving them that period to harden to the environment. But that's the time that I would say to open up that dome. Now, that dome, you don't necessarily need to go and buy that dome from from Amazon. Now, I'm sure you'll see that dome looks similar to something like what you use for cakes, if you're to purchase cakes or rotisserie chicken, right? Those are the same type of material that you can use. And even if you don't want to or even if you don't have the access to these type of things, you can still germinate it open. What I mean, without those type of things, you can still use a general container. All right. As he said, you can put it on top because you require some kind of heat source. You could put it on top of your fridge or even outside. And my very first try at this, I didn't have any domes or nothing like that. I use clear wrap. All right, and I wrap it. I cling wrap. I put it over my my container, and that helped, right? That act as a very good way to trap the humidity for the system, well, it's actually a system, it's a growth chamber, all right, a germination chamber, right? So you can do things like that. Right? What are the medium that you have to use for hydroponics in terms of germinating your seedlings? Of course, rock wool is perhaps the best that outperforms everything there, right? You have perlite as well, which is basically a white dusty substance. I don't really like to use perlite. It acts like soil, so it means if I still have to wash out the root zones, all right, which I think that defeats the purpose. And you have this biomat or bioshirt or hemp mat. This also works. This I think you can get locally. If your region produces tobacco, you can get hemp mat. If not, well, bioshirt acts similar to like toilet paper, of course, and we talked about toilet paper before. You can't use those things, right? The picture in the background is actually using the biomat, all right? Where you're seeing basically a forest of seedlings growing there. And what you'll be using now is a stencil, or you use that knife and you'll cut out each one of the seedlings and them to put in each one of the net cups, all right? Right, this here is actually another video of seedling nursery or a DIY. I want to show you all how easy it is to do seedlings in hydroponics. So just give me 1 more minute of your time to watch this video here. It's a nice video on hydroponics seedlings. It was a way, what he did here was design a DIY, a very easy DIY germination chamber. All right.
And then the volume is very low. Could you put on the closed caption, please?
Okay, I'm actually tell me if you can hear. Will you hear through my mic?
We can hear, but the volume is low. I'm not too sure if others are hearing better than me.
Have him share his computer. Go to more and share computer audio.
Go to more and share computer audio. Okay, hold on. I'm stuck now, guys. Oh dear, I'm stuck. Okay, but in the event, if this cuts off, in the event, what you can do, guys, like I was explaining, is, oh, okay, maybe I can get it here now. Go to more and share. All right, I'm seeing some things going on here, so I don't even want to get into it. But basically, this is a DIY version of how to do the germinations of the seedlings. This is something that you will also get on the slide as well, shared to you, right? So you can get to watch it at your own timing as well. All right?
Okay, thank you.
All right. It's saying low system resources may affect quality of the audio. Okay. My computer is crappy. All right, let's see if we can get. Let's see if we can get back to, let's go back to track. Come on, come on. Right, sorry about that, guys. That was coming to the end of the how to germinate your own seedlings, right? But there's a lot of videos out there. I would be sharing my videos as well on the slide, so you'll be able to see that. All right. Great. Organic hydroponics. Can you do hydroponics? Oh wow. Can you do hydroponics organically? Yes, you can. All right, and I think we allude on that. We touched on that a bit. We talked about how hydroponics. Right. We talked about how you can use the nutrients. It is compost tea, right? Compost tea as an organic nutrient, right? Basically, that is liquid manure, all right? In terms of, if you don't want to use rock wool, since that is synthetic, you can use coconut fiber, coconut core, that helps as well. You have to ensure that you're well oxygenating your system. That goes to say, because what happens is oxygen, whilst it helps plants grow, it can also create an environment for not harboring um, bacteria, bad bacteria, all right, which is good. So like, for example, let's say I had a system that I transplanted some plants and they came with some sort of bacteria or some sort of a disease. I naturally can use some hydrogen peroxide as a good way to kill that bacteria, right? So one thing that we must highlight is what are the pests and diseases you can encounter in hydroponics. One of them is spider mites. They're actually mites that mimic spiders, very small to the eye. This is what it looks like in the eye. And it creates webs around your plants. Basically, this is because of poor maintenance. This is because you weren't able to look at your plants and them carefully, and one small plant might have had a mite, and it multiplied and manifests itself. There are signs and symptoms. These might feed, well, basically how they feed by trapping with their webs, but these webs actually blocks light for the plant in order to grow. So you see the leaves starting to get greenish yellow, right, or tan, or even dark spots. And that's how you can actually know that you have some spider mites living below your leaves and stuff like that, right? There are treatments you can use. You can spray it with some bio-neem. You can use neem oil. You can spray them off. One natural way to get rid of pests. Like, remember I tell you I had a little war going on with my stink bugs, right? My bush bugs in my system. And because I don't like using pesticides, I use my hose, my water hose, and I blast them off. It's like fun. So most times when I have to power wash my yard, I see uh, a sting bug on my system. I actually blast them off with my power hose gun. Right? It's kind of fun. It's cruel, sadly, but I need to get rid of them. All right. And that's one way to get rid of them naturally. By spraying them off, of course. You can keep your temperature and humidity levels under control, because these pests only stay there because you're giving them the environment to stay there. All right, you're basically providing them with the environment for them to live there. All right, so you can do that. Increase airflow, of course, right? If you space out your plants far enough, you'll be able to help the mites and them not be able, you'll prohibit the mites and them to not be able to do that, to spin its web on the leaves. All right, which means it can't live there, which means it won't leave because it's not an adequate environment for it to hunt. All right. You have trips. Oh my, these can be some serious pests, because what they bring is they don't just feast on the leaves or the plants, they also bring diseases. And that's another thing about pests, right? They don't just, it's a double-edged sword. They eat the plant, and they also bring the diseases with the plant. And that by itself could be very catastrophic. That could be very bad, right? Again, signs. You will see some things crawling on the leaves. These are what they look like. It's kind of difficult to see them from the naked eye, but you would be seeing things moving on your leaves, of course. You would see silver and gold spots, patches like this here. All right. Your leaves will be turning yellow, of course, because it's feasting on it. How do you deal with it? Again, proper airflow. Notice here that we're using natural solutions to deal with the plant, and I think Dr. Sarah would have highlighted some of these things for you all as well, right? Natural way or biological ways of dealing with pests and diseases. All right, it's not just about, you don't just have to chemically induce solution for the problem. All right, I have aphids. I just noticed that the slide, oh, okay, great. It comes out really good. I thought the aphid slide you won't be able to see, but on my computer, yeah, you're not able to see there. Okay, but basically some treatments for the aphids. Aphids look like this here. This is a highly infested leaf, and believe it or not, it just take a matter of days for this leaf to be this highly infested. All right. What happens here is basically you have a lack of proper environmental controls going on. What you can use here is some sticky traps as well. It brings with it mildew, right? It brings with it mildew diseases. What you can do to prevent this from happening, of course, is feed the plant high nitrogen levels or high nitrogen fertilizer. All right. What happens is that it becomes so toxic for the aphids that they die. Actually, that's why aphids attack our system. Believe it or not, it's because the plants are going through some nutrient deficiency. That's why you see it's mostly older leaves, older plants that will be infested with aphids, right? Because the system was run down. It didn't. You weren't paying attention to like the nutrient levels of the plant. The plant was not able now to fend off the aphids because the aphid sucks the leaves, and nitrogen is one that will actually burn the aphids itself. You can use insecticide soap, neem soap. I'm not sure if anybody know about that. It's a soap bar here that sells in the grocery store. People use it to bathe with. People use it to bathe their dogs. You can use that as well in hydroponics. So you'll be doing is dissolving some of that, so diluting some of that soap in some water and spraying it onto the leaves. That's a natural way of dealing with these pests. Of course, sticky traps, and I think I talked about that already. And just simply removing the badly infested leaves. That helps. And that helps for another pest, which is the white flies. And I guess we'll talk about that one, or we could talk about it now and then go back to fungus giants, because I don't see that much here in the Caribbean, fungus giants. White flies, they look like white powdery things on your leaves. And believe it or not, if you like kale, I always tell anyone who growing kale for the first time especially that kale is cake for white flies. All right, white flies love kale as a plant, but they also love other leafy vegetables like lettuce and also pak choy. But kale, my gosh, they literally have a party when it comes to kale. All right. And how you get rid of them is wetting the wing, natural way, wetting the wings of the plant, of the white flies, wetting their wings. You use an oily based thing like neem oil again. That's a natural way. And please just break off the leaves that are infected with it. And sometimes if you see it's badly infected, it can be so badly infected that it makes me feel like I want to kill the entire plant and just change it, because it's difficult to get rid of. All right. Fungus giants, I don't see this here in the Caribbean as much. I haven't had any kind of experience with them, but what they look just like white flies, but they're basically this in appearance. Signs, they do carry a lot of diseases, fungal diseases specifically. All right. They apparently reproduce really fast. All right. And what if, all right, somebody have a question?
No, I believe that's somebody's mic who
All right.
was unmuted, got unmuted.
All right, but again, the solution to most of these insects is using neem oil, insecticide soap. You can use sticky traps. You can physically remove them by, like I said, wetting this overhead sprinkling the plant with water or an oily based substance that will wet the wings of the insects and basically keep them from moving to reproduce. All right. Common diseases, of course, iron deficiency. It's not actually not a disease, but I put it there because it looks like a disease. This is what the plants look like when there's no iron. This is actually celery, right? This is celery. This is celery that I take care. When I was doing celery and I noticed iron deficiency one time, and I know I have to put some iron inside of it. It's misdiagnosed for other type of diseases, right? But it's really just iron. Root rot. Anybody could tell me why root rot could be predominant in hydroponics? Why can plants experience root rot? Or what in the system causes plants to experience root rot or lack of it? What in the system or lack of it?
Could it be calcium? Lack of calcium?
Good try, but no.
Renee and
excess water. I like excess water, but somebody saying it. Julian said it. It is actually lack of oxygen in the water. All right. Root rot is actually the root decaying. And why would the roots decay? Because there is no oxygen in the water to help the roots thrive, to have that anaerobic respiration going on. All right. So yeah, that's exactly why you have root rot going on. So if it is that you see in your system and it's experienced, and I think I touched on it before, actually, root rot is because of lack of oxygen and also the temperature of the water. All right. If the water is too high, if the temperature of the water is too high, it will burn the roots of the plant, causing it to experience root rot. Right. If you are experiencing root rot, check your temperature, check the oxygen in the oxygen mechanism. Maybe you would have started a system at home without using an oxygen pump, because remember, you can have a small system without using an oxygen pump, but maybe the type of plants that you're doing, or even the level of oxygen that is currently in the water is so low that the plant will be experiencing root rot. So just plug in an air pump. All right. Other diseases, you have gray mold. All right. I think Dr. Sarah might have touched on at least some of these things, right? But they're basically applied here. You'll see gray mold, and this is what it looks like. How to get rid of it? I would say you need to check your nutrients, and this is where calcium is inconsistent for when it comes to any kind of mold, right? You need to boost your calcium. Mildew, right? I think, again, Dr. Sarah might have touched on these things. All right. How do you get rid of this one? Spray some sort of copper-based thing. That helps. Add iron. That also helps. Right. Same thing here for powdery mildew. Tips on how to prevent diseases from hydroponics. Of course, sanitize the surrounding. Most of the times it's because of it's an environmental problem. That's why you'll have that going on. How do you sanitize? Wash down if it's in your yard that has concrete. Wash down the concrete. Use some vinegar, right? Scrub down the concrete, wash it back down. There's one easy way to deal with that. Use pathogen-free transplants. Right. So remember we talked about how in seedling shops you'll see you may get seedlings that are inherited with diseases. So because of that, you just bring that into your system, and now that just rippled and spread to everybody. It's legitimately like similar to a pandemic. In this case, it's an epidemic because it's in one specific region. But yeah, that's a very good example of that, right? Maintain adequate dissolved oxygen level. Now, believe it or not, a lot of these diseases you can actually fight by just pumping up oxygen inside of your system. Hydrogen peroxide is a very good way to get rid of majority of your diseases. Spray your leaves with some hydrogen peroxide, the 3% solution. How does that go? Is one, right, yeah. 1 tablespoon to a liter of water. That's generally a nice rule to remember if you're using hydrogen peroxide to spray your leaves, right? Maintain a stress-free environment. Now, believe it or not, a lot of these plants are just like us humans. We have mechanisms to get rid of these attacks, right? We have immune systems. They have built up immunity. However, what happens is that the plants are blitzed with with these types of attacks, and because of that, it becomes overwhelmed for it to actually engage any of its defense mechanisms. So healthy plants can actually fight off majority of your pests and diseases. So make sure your plants are healthy, and half of your hydroponic solution problems are over. Consider remediation of nutrient solutions by UV radiation and filtration. Yeah, you can actually attach a UV light to your system to clean out the pathogens inside of the water, but this is very rare. To be honest with you, I have never had the reason to use this other than for aquaponics. All right, so just keep that in mind. There are something you can use. It's called a UV light that you attach onto your water system, and basically what you're doing there, I'll repeat the hydrogen peroxide formula just now. Basically, what you're doing with the UV light is it sterilizes and kills any bacteria inside of the water. All right. I only use it for aquaponics. I'm sure Rakesh might elaborate on that next week. So in terms of hydrogen peroxide, I use 1 tablespoon of hydrogen peroxide to a liter of water. That's what I would use to spray on the leaves of the plant, right? That's a 3% dilution hydrogen peroxide. That's the weakest of the hydrogen peroxide. All right, 1 tablespoon of water, 1 tablespoon of hydrogen peroxide to a liter of water, right? Ms. Gladys asks, can we wash the concrete with Jesse's fluid? I don't know what is Jesse's fluid. Could you explain that for us? Yes, one.
J's fluid.
Sorry?
J's fluid.
I'm not sure. What is that?
J's fluid is a black, they call it chlorine or something like that.
Okay.
I see my son is saying carbolic. It's something, it's a black substance.
Okay, I'm not sure.
It's a liquid.
Is that what called black disinfect by chance?
I got to turn up my mic a little.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's
what happened, my parents had fowls as well as garden, and we grew up with that. Creoline, they call it.
Okay, I'm not sure about that. But if you're using
it's in Trinidad because we grew up with it here in Guyana.
What I'm wondering is what we Trinidadians or Trinidad Tobagonians would call black disinfectant.
Yes.
Right? Well, if it is that, yes, you can wash your yard.
Call it creoline.
That's a little bit sterilized, but that's for me. It's actually unhealthy to use that. Right? It's unhealthy. That's not good for you to inhale a lot of. So if you're using that, dilute it a lot.
Yes, it is usually diluted.
Right. Well, great. All right, you can that is naturally a disinfectant, of course, and of course that will of course kill pathogens and bacteria. So yes, you can use that, right? Of course, you don't want that to go onto the plants, right? So you'll be spraying that only on the surface, on the ground, and stuff like that. But yes, that's a natural way to disinfect your area, your environment. All right.
It is also used for people who have tuberculosis. It's one of the treatments they use long ago.
Okay.
For people with tuberculosis.
Every day, right?
Yes, indeed. It's very, very effective. Because my mom was treating a family up the road from us. The mother and father had died and the girls wanted help. And they were coming ready to inspect them, to take them over to the clinic. And mommy used to treat them with that, just a matchstick, and they shake it out in 2 ounces of water. And they drank it, and it killed the tuberculosis bacteria, bacilli.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's something that would kill bacteria and pathogens. Right?
Well, whatever it was. All right.
So you see, we learn something every day. All right. So yeah, but if you want to prevent your hydroponics from any kind of disease, these are the things that you can deploy. Sticky traps as well. That actually helps a lot. I believe it or not, guys. One more thing, I didn't put it here, but I should tell you all as well. Add flowers. Oh my gosh, add flowers in your garden. That helps. That helps because it brings in a lot of other insects. Remember, we talk about bad insects and good insects. There are good insects that actually could help manage, I don't want to use morbid words here, but manage the population of the bad insects. All right. Remember I told you about my war with these stink bugs, right? And by me introducing flowers and stuff like that around my garden setup, I am seeing less of it because I have butterflies coming over, I have bees coming over, I have oh gosh, dragonflies and all coming over, and because of it, these stink bugs, they're not show their face as much. Well, apart from Monica, my dog, being there, but I'm barely I'm seeing noticeable changes, which is good. All right. So you want to introduce some flowers into your mix, right? Even, and this is not just for hydroponics, this is also for any home garden that you're doing. You're putting something down in the soil, like let's say you're using blocks and you do up a little box, a little grow box. In the holes of the blocks, you could actually put down some crops like marigold and even chive and celery and all those high scented type of crops that actually acts as a biological barrier to keep away the pests and disease, well, the pests and by extension the diseases, right? One more thing, I say how pH coming back here to haunt us. We need to make sure and have a balanced pH. Of course, as I said, this was an example for lettuce, but between 6 and 7, and you're very happy. So long as you have a pH between 6 and 7 in your water, you're very happy. That fights off a lot of your bacteria right there, right? If you're using coconut coir, please make sure and sterilize it, all right? And I talked to you all already about how you're sterilizing it. You could use hydrogen peroxide as that one tablespoon to 1 liter of water, right? Yes, marigold, Julian, you can use marigold, that's right. Right? Gladys talk about make sticky traps. Yes, you can. You can. The same traps you could use for like mice and stuff like that would also help with pests here. I am against using pesticides. I am so against using those red label pesticides. To me, that is basically you using buck or flit or fly spray on my produce, and I don't like that. That is actually one of the reasons why I get into agriculture, right? Because, and hydroponics specifically, because when I was doing my undergraduate degree research, and I went to farmers out there and I see how farmers treating their crops and where they're planting and what they do. And I was like, listen, you see me, I ain't not going to no market again to buy them kind of thing there. And where I'm actually in like a apartment place, so I have no soil. I couldn't plant in soil, so that's why I use hydroponics. Right, that's how I get into it. The name of the plant shop in DB, Miss Andrews, is called Quality Seedlings. All right. It's a nice drive to DB. I promise you that you could eat some doubles and some aloo pie down there on your way there. You can look up on them on Facebook. You will see they have their contact and the directions as to how to get there, right? Quality Seedlings is the name of it. And they have nice flowers as well, right? And they also sell a little few things to hydroponics. Nothing extensive, but a few stuff. Like those stacky pots. Now we're coming down to and this is the end. This is coming to the end here of the lecture class slides and stuff, right? We have post-harvesting, packaging, and the business application to hydroponics. But you want to have a home garden and you see a way to make a little piece of side money, make a money, you understand what I'm saying? What you're doing is, how you're going to do that is basically know how to package your produce, all right? Come up with some attractive ways to do that. But when you harvest your crops on them, what you need to do is make sure you have it in a cool environment, you clean it, you sort it, make sure it has no decay. If it's lettuce, and have no decaying leaves. If it's tomato, make sure and choose all the nice ones out of the bunches, the firm ones on them, and I pack it into a nice container that is attractive. All right. And then I could send it out then that's how you're competing. Now, packaging plays an empirical rule in hydroponics produce, when we post-harvesting for hydroponics produce are notoriously known to flop after you harvest it. And that's because you remember you had it in a baby environment. You were babying the plants on them, you were babying the lettuce on them. And basically they know nothing about the hardening process like that of the soil. However, how you package it can trap the moisture and basically that moisture condensate and replenish the plants and rehydrate the plant and keeps it alive and perky and looking nice and lovely to sell. All right. So these are you have, and there's no book way of doing these things. You just have, it's basic common sense. All right. If I am growing lettuce, I am not going to just cut it and put it in just cut it and just have it on the table to sell outside. All right. It's obviously the lettuce going to flop. It's going to look wilty. So I will want to put it in a plastic container or something like that that would trap the water from evaporating out of the lettuce, that transpirate out of the lettuce. I'll trap it, let it condensate and replenish back, rehydrate back the lettuce, right? So I'll use something like a plastic container. That's why I was alluding to plastic, all right? Yeah, this was an example of making sure that you're having very good type of containers to use. When it comes to the business application part of it, remember bookkeeping is always important. What are you bookkeeping though? What are you keeping track of? Apart from the dollars and cents, apart from the costs and the revenue that you're getting, you need to take into consideration things like the nutrient uptake, how much nutrients you're using this growth cycle, how much nutrients so then you'll be able to forecast how much nutrients you're using in the next growth cycle and so on, right? How much water did you use? Do you need to, if you're living in an area where water is a resource, is a scarce resource, you need to ensure that you know how much water to keep on you at hand when you're doing a hydroponic system. Because remember, if you have no water to top up back the reservoir, you're in trouble, boo-boo. You're in trouble because the plants and them will eventually flop. All right, depends on the type of system that you have. What the design of the system will actually tell you how well you can keep the plants without a pump running, right? Or how well you can keep the plants without any direct contact to water. All right. These are just good examples of some ways or some printable templates that you can use to keep track of your hydroponic system. All right, if you was to do it on a bit, and even if you're doing it on a home scale, again, everything nowadays, you have to look at how you're spending your money, and how you're doing that is true proper record keeping. All right, so this year is the end. Does anybody have any questions in regards to what we talked about earlier on?
Yes, I do have four questions. Let me just get a feedback from the group whether or not they would like us to go with 10 more minutes to answer these 4 questions, or I send these questions to Mr. Brandon and then he will respond in the Google Classroom. So I'm just waiting to hear what the participants would like to do. I see one person saying yes, we could stay on.
Stay on.
All right, so we have 3, so I'll go with that. All right, so I'll wait on you to return, Mr. Brandon.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yes, not a problem. All right, so a few of the participants are saying yes, so I will go ahead with the questions. So the first one comes from Deborah. She's asking, if the shopping list for the hydroponic system, what kind of plug and adapter do we need to get?
Oh, so that's a PVC plug and adapter. So let's say, I think there was 3-inch or 4-inch pipe, then that's a plug and adapter for that. That's a fitting for that pipe, 3-inch or 4-inch, depends on the grow pipe.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. The next one, a picture was sent in the WhatsApp chat of a Blue Lab, the Blue Lab soil pH pen. And the question was asked, is it for soil and water?
No, that's for water only. There's no pH pen that I know of that actually use, that you can use for both soil and water. So there's one that I know that you can use separately for soil. It has like a silver projection coming out of it. That's for the soil one. And this one, you just have a node where you submerge underwater.
All right, thank you. Dr. George is asking if you could do a video of your yard system, and if you could upload it to Google Classrooms, please.
Definitely, definitely. Right.
All right. And the other upload would be if you could show the step-by-step video of how to construct a system.
Yeah, I think we did one quite recently, like last term. But yeah, I can do a construction video on that same one that the person asked about with the plug and adapter. And I would do another video on the one that we were supposed to do today, which was with the container system, that DWC system. Right?
Awesome. Yes.
To help
All
with
right, yeah, go ahead.
To help with the interest of time, I'll do those 2 videos. That's not a problem.
All right, and the final question is for me. What are your thoughts on greenhouse emission gases and the environment? Because I know that initially greenhouses was very popular, and then thereafter the information came out that it's not very helpful for the environment. What are your thoughts?
All right. So with these type of things, keep in mind of this, right? New technology, when you have new technology, you will not know, you will not know what are the ramifications until it's properly tested, right? Greenhouse technology back then, when it was first introduced, it was like your new iPhone or your new phone. Everybody wanted it, right? But the issue is that nobody knew what were the bugs and things that needed to be fixed for it, right? So what I'm getting at is this: where greenhouse and the environment is of concern, it has its pros and its cons. It depends on however you want to look at it. In terms of its impact to the environment, well, that's a whole other thing by itself. There is, we could talk about the materials that the carbon cost of the materials that you have to use to build a greenhouse system. You could even talk about the operating, and also some of the operating benefits. Remember, greenhouse helps with decreasing the leaching of your fertilizer into waterways, which means you're decreasing pollution, water pollution in that kind of case. All right. But if you want to bring it back down to a hydroponic setting, greenhouses also help decrease your water usage, right?
All right, thank you so much, Brandon. And this would be the end of our question and answer. I thank you so much for the information that you shared with us. It was a lot. It was detailed, well explained. Your stamina and energy that was maintained as a presenter was quite impressive for these 3+ hours. You gave good responses to the question and answer, and you were patient, as one of the participants did give you thanks for. Unfortunately, Dr. George is no longer with us because she's having some weather system challenges in her area.
Really
So
raining,
that's,
guys. It's ridiculous.
Yes, it is. It was raining a while ago, and from my window, it's a pretty dark cloud. So
yeah,
we might have some showers and blessings for the rest of the day. We're just asking the class to be as safe as possible. On behalf of Dr. George and the basic gardening class, we do thank you for your time, for your talent, and your hydro knowledge.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
The greatest takeaway for me would be the biblical principle when you shared that plants shall not live by water alone. Because it's a reminder to us that the Creator has given us biblical principles to support our home gardening. So 2 thumbs up to you, Brandon.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Bye, everyone.
All right, and this will be the end of our class. Thank you so much for today. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. Do have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Be safe. And for those of us who would have bathed in the rain when we were younger, if you want to do that today, enjoy it.
Fine. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Green. Thank you, Dr. George. Thank you again to our lecturer. We really appreciate the information, invaluable information shared willingly and with love. We thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you.
God bless.
Okay, bye-bye.
Brandon, you remind me of when I was a teacher, when I was active. Time was not important to me when I got down into my subject, whether it was maths, literature, or English.
But
I would just go through.
I enjoy teaching.
Thanks a lot.
So when you enjoy doing what you do, you don't watch your time. Time just pass.
That is true. Brandon, someone is asking for a contact. Would you want to share that in the Zoom chat? Yes, a contact for you.
Will do. I'm going to send my contact, which is a WhatsApp contact as well for anyone.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll just wait here for 2 more minutes so that persons can have that information, and I will also send it again in the WhatsApp group chat that we have.
Yes, because I think I just sent it, right. So I think everyone should get it now, yeah.
Yes. All right, thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.